Welcome to the Luigi's Mansion Iceberg. Thanks to Matos Schmilmore and all these other people for making the iceberg. Tier 1. Luigi's Mansion Beta. The beta for Luigi's Mansion felt like almost an entirely different game. A lot of entries on this list that are yellow are either from the beta or unused assets, but the beta is very different and there's a lot of content that ended up getting scrapped and, well, would have been quite a bit scarier. Beta game over screen. If you ended up dying in normal Luigi's Mansion, you'd get a pretty standard game over screen. It just says good night as Luigi falls over. But the beta one zooms out of the mansion and has Luigi make an oddly scary face before fading to black. His eyes even go fully white. It doesn't even say game over or anything, it just fades to black. Hanging Luigi shadow. When exploring through the attic, lightning will flash occasionally and a shadow will appear, and with the placement of the shadow, it really makes it look like Luigi's hanging from the ceiling. This caused some kids to obviously get scared and a lot of creepypastas were made from it. Basically, this was getting popular for being an out-of-nowhere, extremely violent sort of jump scare that Nintendo just threw in there. But it turns out this was just a glitch. In Luigi's Mansion, shadows are displayed based off the camera angle, and since this one area in the attic is lower to the ground, with the roof being right above Luigi, the shadow is a bit displaced and it makes it look extremely violent with where the shadow lands. Space World 2000 build. Just like with Pokemon and many other Nintendo games, Space World had a lot of early footage of these games that became massively popular for a lot of features never making it into their main games. Like with Luigi's Mansion, there's a lot of footage of it, and a lot of the features in this build never made it to the main game. Space World 2000 specifically had a lot with Luigi's Mansion. You can even see the previously mentioned beta game over screen from this. A lot of the designs from the specific build shown at Space World completely changed, and there still hasn't been any versions of this build found. It's a completely lost early build of the game, and it would have been amazing to see. I wouldn't be shocked if someday, whenever Nintendo has another leak, that we may end up finally getting a version of this build to run. Speaking of cut things from the Space World demo, the Basher Ghost is one of these. The only footage of the Basher Ghost is really bad quality, but luckily some of the animations for the ghost were found. The Bashers used the same model as the Gold Ghost, but acted a lot differently. A Basher would sneak up behind Luigi, invisible until close enough, and once it was close enough, a big puff of blue smoke would appear, soon followed by the ghost saying "Bah," causing Luigi to scream and crawl backwards uncontrollably, and have his health cut down to 50. After a few seconds, his health would come back to what he had before taking any damage. The Game Boy Horror's purpose at the time of this ghost development seems to have been for this specific ghost, as it would indicate when a Basher is nearby in the same way that it detects boos in the final game. In order to capture a Basher, Luigi would have to wait until the Game Boy Horror flashed red, then stun the ghost with his flashlight as soon as it appeared. The Basher only had 5 HP, so he was most likely going to be one of the hallway ghosts, kind of like the bowling ghosts and ceiling surprise ghosts. Beating the game in under 20 minutes glitch run. Luigi's Mansion isn't necessarily known for being a glitchy game, since a lot of the glitches you have to try pretty hard to trigger, but if you know how to do them, the game ends up being a mess. It's not too hard to get to the end of the game within 30 minutes. Through using certain glitches, you can clip out of most of the game and just skip the final fight. There's a whole guide on how to do it if you want to try, it'll be in the description, but speedrunning of this game with these glitches is just insane. 3DS Remake. In the March 2018 Nintendo Direct, Nintendo revealed a remake of Luigi's Mansion. They also revealed a new design gallery and boss rush mode. Then 6 months later, in another Direct, they revealed the remake was going to have amiibo support and a 2-player co-op mode. This remake was super well done. Aside from looking better, having 2 screens just means you can have a map on the bottom half, which is just super helpful. And the original Luigi's Mansion was planned to have full stereoscopic 3D, you know, the kind where you can wear the glasses, or if you have a super expensive TV just displayed in 3D. But those TVs weren't too popular back then, and with how much it cost, the 3D for the GameCube version of the game got cut. But the 3DS could do this. So out of all the games on the 3DS that has 3D, this one really feels like it's designed for it, because it was, sort of. I know the 3D on the 3DS is kind of iffy and usually doesn't fit in with games. For this remake, it really does. Also, most of the rooms and, well, parts of the game got a full makeover with this remake. Like the Safari room just looks infinitely better. The only downside is that since the assets are newer, they kinda went a different route, making it more colorful and modern than dark and old, but it doesn't take away a whole lot. The remake's for sure worth playing. Just unfortunate they released it at the time they did. I mean, the Switch was already out, so this game really didn't get the attention it deserved. Other references to Luigi's Mansion / Mario Kart maps. Luigi's Mansion has been referenced in a lot of other pieces of media, obviously being Nintendo pieces of media, but there's a lot. So in this entry, I'll be covering all the Mario Kart maps since they are references to Luigi's Mansion, but there's a lot of references to Luigi's Mansion, and if I went through all of them in depth, this video would be like 3 hours long. So I will quickly go through these, and don't worry, a lot of these I'll talk about later on. They relate to later entries. So for references to Luigi's Mansion, there's Vacuum Luigi being a trophy in Smash Melee, EGAD being referenced in Mario Sunshine by one of his inventions, a Pianta in Mario Sunshine saying why can't someone just come along and suck him up with a vacuum, the Gadlight item being in Mario Party 4 made by EGAD, Luigi's Final in Smash, a cleaned up mansion being in a Mario Kart Double Dash map in the distance, also being a playable battle mode map in the same game. You can get the Game Boy Horror from EGAD in Mario and Luigi Superstars Saga, Luigi's Mansion being a map in Mario Power Tennis, in Super Mario 64 DS, there's a minigame where you have to find booze in a mansion playing as Luigi. A Luigi's Mansion themed board being in Mario Party 6, EGAD shows up in Mario Party Advance, Luigi's Mansion being a course in Mario Kart DS, my first experience with the Luigi's Mansion personally. In the same Mario Kart game, there's a poltergust cart with a big vacuum. EGAD shows up again in Mario and Luigi Partners in Time, there's a Luigi's Mansion court in Mario Hoops 3-on-3. In Super Paper Mario, there's a Mansion Patrol minigame that's in the mansion, and the minigame Spectre Inspector in Mario Party 8 has ghosts from Luigi's Mansion. Mario Galaxy's got a mansion level that looks exactly like Luigi's Mansion. The mansion's a stage in Smash Brawl. In Mario Super Sluggers, there's a Luigi's Mansion park you can play on. There's a mansion basketball court in Mario Sports Mix. In the same game, there's a volleyball court in the mansion. Luigi's Mansion has a course in Mario Kart 7. Mario Party 9 has a Luigi's Mansion inspired board. There's a Luigi's Mansion puzzle on Street Pass, a stage in Smash Bros. For the Wii U. Luigi's special move in the same Smash is from Luigi's Mansion. The Twisted Mansion course in Mario Kart 8 is inspired directly off of Luigi's Mansion and shares some of the same music. Luigi's Amiibo board in Mario Party 10 is based off Luigi's Mansion. There's an EGAD costume in the first Mario Maker. There's levels inspired off Luigi's Mansion in Mini Mario and Friends Amiibo Challenge. Mario Kart 8's got a Luigi's Mansion battle mode map. In Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, there's a poltergust weapon. In the trailer for Smash Ultimate, Luigi uses a poltergust. Luigi's Smash in Smash Ultimate is straight from Luigi's Mansion. The previously mentioned Smash stage that was a mansion returns in Smash Ultimate. And yeah, those are the 25 games referencing Luigi's Mansion. I know you probably didn't get any of what I just said, but a lot of them I'll talk about more in depth in future entries. But yeah, clearly Luigi's Mansion is a very big part of Nintendo and constantly gets referenced in other games. Safari Ghost. The Safari Ghost is talked about a lot amongst Luigi's Mansion fans. Ever since its release in 2001, people have been convinced there is a Safari Ghost in the Safari Room, or some type of hunter ghost, that even if it's not in the game, that it was planned at some point. And while most evidence of this ghost being a thing is unreliable and it's just my friend said he saw it, the main thing leading people to believe that this ghost was real, or at least planned, was in this segment of Nintendo Power magazine in October of 2001, where in a part of it showing the Safari Room, it states, "When your ghoul-busting mission takes you to the trophy room, proceed with caution. If you meet up with the ghost of a hunter, he'll want to add Luigi to his collection." Okay, so yeah, this means the ghost has gotta exist, or at least maybe it was in the beta or planned, but no. The magazine came out a month after the Japanese release of the game, and this was just flavor text. This Safari or Hunter ghost never existed and was just made up by multiple fans over time, most likely just misremembering a part of the game, having a dream about it, or just trying to mess around. The ghost that people thought was in development was also probably too violent for Nintendo. A lot of the remarks about the non-existent ghost state that he'd talk about putting Luigi on his wall alongside his taxidermy. And I think that's just a little bit too far for what Nintendo usually allows in their games. Hidden menu messages. In the menu for Luigi's Mansion, there's multiple hidden messages that can be seen. Like when you go to start playing a save, it'll fade in and out text that says, "Welcome to your mansion." But one letter fades faster than the rest. And if you pause it at just the right time, yeah, the Y fades out faster and it says, "Welcome to our mansion." Also, when you go to delete a save, it says, "You can erase the files" as a subtext, but then fades to, "but not the fear." Even when you go to quit to the menu, there's text that changes from "you'll be back" to "and we'll be waiting." And this one isn't a message, but it's hidden somewhere you wouldn't expect. When in the training room, viewing the controls of the game, you'll hear pretty standard music. Just a short little melody repeating in the background. But when reviewing the controls here, if you stay on this page for a little under 3 minutes, the music will change. You'll hear a strange sound, then the music completely switches up. And this change is really neat. Sounds a lot cooler and eventually goes back to normal. But there's a strange sequence of notes you can hear in the music. Well, that is Tataka's song. A song that's worked into every game Kazumi Tataka works on. And this little song's been in a lot. Animal Crossing, Smash, even the Wii Shop. This has been in a lot of different parts of Nintendo, and it's usually super hard to realize when you're listening to other work Tataka's done. Hidden rooms. How could you make a game set in a mansion without hidden rooms? Exactly. There's 2 hidden rooms in the first Luigi's Mansion. The first one, you have to aim the Game Boy Horror at a small hole at the bottom of this wall, and you'll get sucked into a treasure room. And the second, you need to fall down the chimney at the top of the mansion, and you'll find yourself in another room full of treasures. Watering plants and watering the big flower. Watering plants can be a pretty big part of Luigi's Mansion. It's used to solve multiple puzzles and get one of the gems. To get this gem, the golden diamond, you have to water this big flower from seedling all the way through to flower. And right before it turns into a flower, watering it for the last time, it'll spit out the golden diamond that's worth 4,000 coins. Poltergust overheating. The Poltergust, Luigi's vacuum for ghosts, aside from originally being named the Poltergust 400 instead of 3000, also looked a lot more boxy when it was originally shown off. The main difference, aside from appearance that I think everyone's glad they got rid of, is the overheating feature. In the beta for Luigi's Mansion, the Poltergust would be able to overheat and explode, damaging Luigi if he used it too much. It seems some way through development, they decided to use this for the elements, like water, ice, and fire that you can use later on, but completely scrapped it for the normal vacuum. You're just using it way too much and it'd be super annoying. E3 timer. The demo of Luigi's Mansion had a timer of 20 minutes that you could play, which was about an hour and a half in Luigi's Mansion time. Not too much on this entry. It was just a limited time to play, and this whole clock got scrapped before the final release. Falling chandelier. If you stand in the center of the main hall of the mansion, the chandelier right above you will fall. Every time. But it falls because of a ghost named Chauncey, meaning when you defeat this ghost later on in the game, the chandelier no longer falls. It's just a nice little feature that changes. Seeing something even minor in a game world change because of an action you did just feels really satisfying. Speedy spirits. Speedy spirits are different from other ghosts in Luigi's Mansion. Instead of attacking Luigi, they instead hide from him, and if found, run away. They're pretty much collectibles, so you can just get them with a poltergust and get coins from them. Golden mice are also similar to the speedy spirits. They also run away, and once collected, they can drop coins, stones, and sometimes even collectibles. Space World 2001 build. When talking about the beta of Luigi's Mansion, it's most likely a mix of 2 builds. The build shown at Space World 2000 and the build shown at Space World 2001. Both are pretty similar. Obviously, the 2001 build is a lot closer to what we got on final release, but both builds are still lost. Looking at the differences between them is really cool. It's just unfortunate that there's no way to play them. Luigi's Mansion Lego set. In recent years, Nintendo finally started doing collaborations with Lego, having multiple Mario sets, and as of the first day of 2022, January 1st, having Luigi's Mansion sets too. There's been 3 sets so far: the Lab and Poltergust expansion set, the Entryway expansion set, and the Haunt and Seek set. These sets obviously aren't what you'd expect when you think Lego. Normally Lego sets are one big building, but these and the Mario sets, they decided to make them more interactable, with each part having multiple moving parts and things you can easily swap around and use. Unfortunately, these are now discontinued, but you can still buy the Mario sets. Boo puns. While wandering through the mansion, when entering the storage room, Luigi accidentally releases 50 boos, and all of these boos have names. Pun names. I won't make you suffer by having to hear them all, but none of them are good. They're like dad joke humor. Vincent van Gogh. Vincent van Gogh is a portrait ghost. He's a painter who has the ability to bring paintings to life, and is the one responsible for creating all of the normal ghosts throughout the mansion. He ends up being the boss of Area 4, the attic in the mansion, and is the last ghost fought before fighting King Boo. The mansion is an illusion. The ending of Luigi's Mansion has Luigi returning to Egad's laboratory, and he's informed that the mansion has ceased to exist, due to it being an illusion, and they turned King Boo into a painting alongside with the last recaptured ghost. And not a part of this entry, but in the epilogue, as a sign of gratitude towards Luigi for all his help, Egad has a new non-haunted house built for him on the former site of the mansion, with its size determined by the amount of treasure collected during the game, that ranges from a small little shack or tent to a brand new mansion. Boarded up doors in the beta. The beta of Luigi's Mansion had a lot of boarded up doors to keep players from exploring everything and trying to get to unfinished locations. I couldn't find any footage of this, just mentions online, but some of the boarded up doors remained. Just with these doors, they were the hidden treasure rooms that you'd have to access in different ways. Beta ghost designs. Like I said before, there was some ghost cut from the beta of the game, like the Basher ghost, but there's also these two ghosts we don't even have names for. They were in the trailer for the Space World builds and were never given a name or fleshed out at all. There's also early versions of the other ghosts from the beta, like this is what the blue twirler ghost originally looked like, and this is what the purple puncher ghost originally looked like. Both of these ghost color palettes completely changed, and it was for sure for the better. Also, the purple puncher ghost is what I set my online college profile to. Beta gaming HUD. The HUD of Luigi's Mansion was a lot different in the beta. Instead of just the health and Game Boy Horror, you can see in this image that there was a beta timer, the health looked normal, a coin count that would normally just be the Game Boy, and an overheat meter for the Poltergust. It's mainly just mechanics that got scrapped and were removed, but I'm glad they changed it. Having that much on screen just looks like a mess. Painting rankings. Like I mentioned earlier, based on how much coins you got when completing the game, you'd get a different mansion in the end. It ranges from ratings H through A, and on the 3DS there's an exclusive S rating you can get, for getting over 130 million gold. Toad was sent by Peach. The story of Luigi's Mansion, at least in the start, is that Luigi won a contest for the brand new mansion, but he never entered it. Mario and him both went to check it out, and Mario got to the mansion first and went missing. And some Toads were later sent by Peach because she was worried that they were walking into danger. When talking to one of the Toads in the foyer, they're scared and unable to do anything. So once Luigi helps out, he explains that they were in the mansion and begged Luigi, saying Peach will flip out if she finds out Mario was captured. Peach herself is never seen in the game, but later on in the franchise, in the third game, she's seen joining Mario and Luigi going to the new mansion. Tier 2. PAL Region's Hidden Mansion. The Hidden Mansion is a game mode that has harder ghosts, the Poltergust is 2 times as powerful, and you earn more money in this mode, but Luigi takes double damage. So you basically play as a glass cannon. The Hidden Mansion is playable just after one playthrough of the game, and this mode is already super unique and fun, but the PAL version of the game, if you don't know, PAL is sort of a standard in Europe and Asia, and then in America we have NTSC games. It's a weird thing with refresh rate, but the PAL versions actually got something exclusive with this. In PAL versions of Luigi's Mansion, the Hidden Mansion mode is made more unique. Instead of the normal just mansion is harder, it's also a mirrored version of the mansion. So everything that was on the left half is now on the right, and vice versa. Not many games really have any differences for the PAL versions, and if they do, they're most likely not nearly as unique as this one's. Chef Ghost. This is the one screenshot of the Chef Ghost that was in the beta of Luigi's Mansion. It's just a ghost in the kitchen holding a tomato, so normally this would be all we know, just that it was a unique ghost and that's it. But there's a modding team that's been remaking Luigi's Mansion with as much stuff from the beta reconstructed as possible, and when asked about this ghost specifically, one of the members of the team said, quote, "We know that he uses a tomato in his attack due to the tomato model still being present in the game. He throws a tomato like a bowling ball ghost throws a bowling ball." End quote. And the model for the bowling ball in the game is named Tomato in the game's files. So yeah, we totally just missed out on a cool ghost design and a new type of attack. Sure, it'd be probably even the same animation as a bowling ball ghost, but it'd be a tomato. Out of all things that were in the beta that I wish they kept in, this one's for sure at least in my top 3. Hey Luigi, what's the holdup? When entering the well in the garden outside of the mansion, it's really hard to hear and most people won't even recognize anything was said, but you can hear Mario say, "Hey Luigi, what's the holdup?" I'll play the clip for you. If you didn't have your audio near max while playing this alone, I doubt most people would ever have noticed this. Astral Hall looping. The Astral Hall room is very unique. At first it looks like a normal dark room with some unlit candles in the middle. You get coins from the drawers on both sides of the room and go to the right? Well, when you try to, you will loop the room, coming out of the left door again. Well, you need to light these candles, and once you do, stand in the center of the room, and the candles turn purple and ghosts appear that you have to fight. Then everything goes all normal, all bright, and you can go to the right finally. It's one of the most unique rooms in the game, and I'm sure some people just totally skip this, just not realizing what to do. Rank A mansion in Luigi Circuit. Like previously mentioned, Luigi's Mansion was shown off in Mario Kart Double Dash, specifically the A rank mansion. Obviously, they couldn't have the S rank from the remake, but this one's still really nice. Also, to save on storage and performance, it's hardly modeled at all. If you go around the back of it, yeah, it's just see-through. Ghosts playing cards. At Space World 2007, there was a scene of some ghosts playing cards, and we even have some footage of it, but this unfortunately got cut from the game. I would say this is because it looked like gambling, but it was 2000 and they didn't care as much back then, so I legitimately have no clue why this was cut from the game. Unused dialogue icons. In the beta for Luigi's Mansion, there was a lot of dialogue icons that got cut, showing that you'd be able to talk to these characters. And the ones that got cut were for Bowser, Mario, a gold ghost, Green Toad, a character that wasn't even in the full game, and Nana the Ghost. Unused ending rank emotes. Left over in the files of the final release of the game are these pictures of Luigi we can only assume is reacting to the ending grade of your save. This is the best possible ending reaction, just holding two peace signs up. The overall good reaction is normal, just normal single peace signs. But the worst ending reaction, Luigi just looks depressed. This reaction looks a lot like the game over screen in the beta and was probably cut alongside that. Elemental Blast. Once you recover an elemental metal, Luigi is then able to use that element of the metal, it can be fire, water, or even ice, to fire out from the poltergust. You use a lot of the elements for puzzles in the game, and it just makes the poltergust so much better. Having the ability to light candles or water plants opens up a lot more things you can do in the mansion. Burning down fake doors. Speaking of the uses of these elements, one of the harder ones to notice is burning down these fake doors. Sometimes there's doors scattered around in rooms, and they're just illusions by ghosts, some of them even attacking you if you try to enter them, so you can burn them down with a fire metal. Mario Storybook. At several points throughout Luigi's Mansion, you can see a book titled Mario's Story. Most people talk about this image of it, where it's being read by the first portrait ghost you fight, Neville. A big fan theory spawned from this, being that possibly the events of Paper Mario take place in this book, and the Japanese name for Paper Mario literally translates to Mario's Story, the name of the book. Even if it's not, say, canon, it's at least hinted to a lot. Pikmin trailer. On the bonus disc for Luigi's Mansion is a trailer for Pikmin. Not a lot to this entry, but it was kind of cool getting to see a new game coming out while playing a different one. They've pretty much stopped altogether in putting these types of trailers in games. Luigi's Mansion lasts one night. The story of Luigi's Mansion takes place over one night. Some people state that the gameplay takes more than just a night, which, well, isn't fully true. You can beat the game in around 6 to 7 hours, and if the game starts at, say, 8 p.m., it would then end at 4 or 5 before the sun comes out, so it does kind of work out. Plus, it's a game, so it doesn't really matter how much real time you spend in it compared to the in-game time. But yeah, the whole game takes place within a night. Beta restoration. Have you ever wanted to play the Luigi's Mansion beta? Or, as of hearing about it now, you want to? Well, you sort of can. We don't have an official build from Space World, but a team of modders have remade pretty much everything from the beta that is in the old footage that's still online, and made a mod for it. At least, you know, they did all they could. There is limited footage, so it's not 100% accurate to the Space World 2000 or 2001 builds of the game, but if you've heard of a feature from the beta of the game, it's in this. It's by far one of the most interesting modding projects I've ever seen, and by far the biggest mod for Luigi's Mansion fans. The link for it, if you want to try it out, is in the description. I highly recommend it. Luigi's Mansion Official Guidebook. Releasing alongside the game, there was an official Luigi's Mansion guidebook. It's pretty big, about 100 pages, and they're not too expensive nowadays, but yeah, pretty much every game that released back in the early 2000s had a guidebook, but this one's cooler because it's Luigi's Mansion. Readable books. There's 7 readable books in Luigi's Mansion, these being the Book of Pericles, Book of Riddles, Darkness in Their Cheese, Egad's Guide to Ghosts, Lydia's Child Care Diary, Neville's Big Baby Care Diary, and lastly, Egad's Research Journal. These books give you hints at how to solve puzzles that are in the game, and most of them are found in the study. 6 of the 7 are. Elemental Blast. With the elemental medallions, you can normally use an element like fire, water, or ice, and it's just shooting out the element normally. But if you press the fire button all the way, you can do an elemental blast. Say with the fire medallion, it normally spits out fire, pretty generically like a flamethrower, but if you press it down all the way, it turns into a fireball. Beta Gallery. The gallery is already a big part of Luigi's Mansion, having all the portraits for the portrait ghost that are super important in progressing the game. The beta version of the gallery was much bigger though, meaning that there was most likely a lot more of these portrait ghosts planned out for the game, but they were cut before release. Luigi's Mansion 64 mod. There's a mod for Luigi's Mansion, or I guess Mario 64? A mod for Mario 64 that recreates Luigi's Mansion inside of it. It still uses the same levels as Mario 64, but obviously changed drastically. This mod has a similar level of popularity as the beta restoration mod, and it's really impressive. Most mechanics of the game were completely redone, and the levels look really good. It's pretty much just what Luigi's Mansion would have looked like if it was released on the N64. Luigi's Mansion originally supported 3D. Like I mentioned earlier, Luigi's Mansion was originally going to have 3D support, but it would have cost too much in development, and the actual number of people who would have been able to use it just was so low it wasn't worth it. At least on the 3DS version of the game you could use 3D, but it would have been a lot cooler to have on GameCube. Teleporting mirrors. Fast travel wasn't really a thing in Nintendo games until kind of recently. Not many games had big enough maps for it to matter, so how do you travel around the mansion without losing your mind retracing all these steps and going through all these doors? Well, if you point the Game Boy Horror camera into a mirror, it'll teleport Luigi back to the foyer, the start of the mansion. Without this feature, the game would take a lot longer to play and just be a lot more annoying. Super Mario 64 sound sample. There were a few lines of dialogue by Luigi that got cut prior to release, but remain in the files. One of these being when he says ow, being bit by Spooky the dog. This audio was actually used in the trailer for the 3DS remake of the game, but was never in the remake. It was, however, used in the DS version of Mario 64. If you didn't know, you can play as Mario, Luigi, Wario, and Yoshi in the DS version of Mario 64. But yeah, it's weird that this bit of audio was only ever used in the DS version of Mario 64. The crows. The crows were first shown off in Luigi's Mansion 1. You'd think crows would be in any other Nintendo game before 2001, but no. The closest thing we have was the crow, with a K, in Donkey Kong Country 2. But yeah, the crows spelled normally were first introduced in Luigi's Mansion. Technically, they appeared in Mario Picross 6 years prior, but watching gameplay of the level that they supposedly appear in, I just couldn't spot them at all. But yeah, in Luigi's Mansion, they had super low health and still did damage to you, so they were kind of annoying to get rid of, but they looked really cool and fit the theme of Luigi's Mansion. Beta Mansion concepts. The initial development for Luigi's Mansion wasn't even with Luigi. At first, it was going to be in a dollhouse with some desert levels and would star Mario. That got scrapped pretty fast, but an apartment and quote ninja mansion, I don't know what that would have looked like, were also planned. It would have been cool to see what these would have looked like, maybe in concept art, but I'm glad they went with a spooky mansion instead of these. Amiibo support in the remake. The 3DS remake of Luigi's Mansion had amiibo support, and some of the amiibos were really good. There were 4 that worked, being Luigi, Toad, Boo, and Mario. Luigi would have given you a chance to revive when you ran out of health, and furniture hiding a speedy spirit would light up. Toads would have made talking to a toad in the game restore health. The Boo amiibo would show on the map 3 hidden locations of Boos. And lastly, the Mario amiibo would make it so mushrooms you find will be health restoring super mushrooms instead of poison mushrooms. Ghost biographies. Every portrait ghost you fight has a biography, telling you what they were like in the afterlife. And most of them are pretty tame. They're just living a normal life in the afterlife, and only become mean when they see you. Boo looking at you in the pause menu. When you pause Luigi's Mansion, you can see a spooky little Easter egg the developers decided to throw in. If you look at the Boo here at the top, he'll occasionally glance at you. Not anything super scary, but it'd for sure catch you off guard if you were just checking out the pause screen. Tier 3, L. L, or ELH, is a unused beta model in Luigi's Mansion. Some say that L was an unused boss in the game that you'd have to defeat with the elements, but it hasn't been confirmed. According to the game's files, it was made a month after E3 and has 6 animations. All can be put in the game if you use something like Action Replay to replace Toad with him, but it's obviously not gonna fully work like intended. The name L is also more or less a fan name, just based off the file name of the model, that's elh.szp. This character's attack would have involved crossing its arms and smashing the floor, and their normal idle state would have just been to stare at Luigi with their arms outstretched. This character also has an appearing animation involving them rising from a crunch state, implying that it would have been able to manifest itself before the battle. It also appears to have what translates to a standby animation that's most likely played while it's just waiting for Luigi to attack. This character was an elemental of sorts, being able to make certain elements appear in the fight. They had 2 animations for both ice and fire, one involving making a body of ice or fire appear, and another appearing to be a stream of circular particles. This is one of the most iconic unused creatures in a game, and I already covered it in another video of mine a few months ago, still no new information on it. Some people believe it could have been an early version of the Bogmire enemy, but there's no for sure answer and the devs have never even mentioned him. Map 0. Map 0 is a playable map in Luigi's Mansion with Action Replay, so it's fully in the files, you just need to cheat to get in. But this map's super interesting. It's similar to the full game, but most of the map just doesn't exist. When you go up the staircase here, there isn't a second floor and you can phase directly through the door at the bottom. There's just a ton of weird unused parts in the game that were left over, and it's super cool getting to see what a beta mansion might have looked like. A lot of the stuff in this though is just kind of buggy and doesn't really work. Bowser is dead theory. At the end of Paper Mario 64, Bowser is defeated. Not by lava like other games. No, he was exploded and fell miles and miles down. In the game, on a sign, it stated that Bowser was badly beaten and will likely never return. We're sure of it. Almost positive. Obviously, it's a Mario game, so he'll most likely return, and this was more him just being injured. But in Luigi's Mansion, when showing the fortune teller Mario's items that were left around the mansion, upon examining the last of the objects, she states, "How can this be? I see the hideous form of Bowser. Is Bowser somewhere in the mansion? I can't believe it, and yet I see it. I thought Mario had soundly defeated Bowser. Has King Boo somehow revived Bowser? This could be horrible. Well, for you." This shows that, at least for a time, Bowser was dead. Luigi's Mansion is the next Mario game in the series after Paper Mario 64, and there's multiple connections between the games, making Luigi's Mansion pretty much a direct sequel to Paper Mario. In Paper Mario, in Luigi's home, there's a diary written by Luigi himself, talking about how he wishes he could have his own adventure, hinting to Luigi's Mansion. And previously mentioned, the book that Neville was reading translates to Mario's Story, the Japanese name of Paper Mario. And this shows why King Boo was using a fake Bowser in the final fight of Luigi's Mansion. So is King Boo just pretending to be Bowser? Pretending to be a King Koopa instead of King Boo? I mean, even in Mario 64, Bowser's laugh is just a slowed version of King Boo's. Most likely this is just digging way too deep, but a lot of it does make sense. At the end of the day, it's Nintendo, so even if it is correct, I doubt they'd ever say it. I mean, Bowser's been in a lot of games after this one, so it's either Bowser died in Paper Mario and was resurrected to be used as a fake Bowser, Bowser never existed and was always King Boo, or Bowser was just revived or survived the final fall in Paper Mario, and we're digging way too deep. Luigi Matryoshka doll. There's an unused model in the files of Luigi's Mansion that resembles a Matryoshka doll. You know those things from Rise of the Guardians? But of Luigi. I'm guessing this was maybe going to be used as a map marker for where Luigi was in the Game Boy Horror, but there's no for sure answer of what this could have been used for. Luigi's canonically rank is rank D. The canon ending for Luigi's Mansion 1 is the D ending. While at the start of Luigi's Mansion 2 Dark Moon, it shows Luigi's house and it's identical to the rank D endings in the first game. Not too much else for this entry, just Luigi for sure got the D rank. Daisy poster. Left over in the files of the game lies these 2 images of Daisy. Unfortunately, she never appeared in the game, or really any games honestly, very underused character, but these are left over in the files, implying that they would have been in a painting or there would have been some type of reference to Daisy in the game. Even though it's never clearly stated that Luigi and Daisy are a couple, I mean, come on, they obviously are. There's so many times throughout different Mario games that it's hinted at, and it's all but confirmed. So, it'd make sense for her to be in the game in some way. Also, if you couldn't tell, these files were just ripped from Mario Tennis for the N64 and put into Luigi's Mansion. I really wish anything was done with Daisy in this game, but it could have just been files that somehow made their way into the folder for Luigi's Mansion, and they might have just not ever noticed they were there. Spinning coin. When exploring Out of Bounds, you can find a spinning coin. This coin is active in every room, and it's believed it was the coin that was once used in the E3 2001 build coin counter, as it uses a rotating animation near identical to the 2001 builds. Also, in the game's internal coding, this coin serves as a base to control the behavior and attributes of all existing coins in Luigi's Mansion, although it features no collision and nothing happens when you interact with it. Logo being Pop Happiness font. The font used for Luigi's Mansion logo is called Pop Happiness. It's a really old font made back in 1997. Just kind of ironic that they used a Pop Happiness font for a Luigi's Mansion game. Obviously not meant to be super happy or cheerful. Beta lab music. The music for the lab was different in the beta. Not really anything to say about this entry, but I'll be using the music as backing for the next few entries. B Mario. B Mario is the name of this model. The model shares animations with one called Luigi.mdl. Luigi is a cut model of Luigi that looks near identical to what we got on final release. Well, there's a lot of animations that got cut for both of these characters, and it seems like Mario could share the same animations with Luigi. Like maybe initially in development they had planned for you to be able to play as Mario maybe? Kind of like what they did later on with Mario Galaxy, where if you 100%ed the game you could play as Luigi. There's no solid evidence of this really, but it'd make a lot of sense. Drive people to play the game more if Mario was playable. It'd just be a nice thing to 100% the game and be able to play as Mario. C Parmesan. In the beta for Luigi's Mansion, there's leftover files that reference a C Parmesan, and in the book Darkness is Their Cheese, there's a quote directly from this character, but we never see them in the game. Most people assume this is what the chef's ghost name was, and yeah, it makes sense. I can't imagine a C Parmesan would be anyone else but the chef ghost. E3 2001 GBH map, Game Boy Horror map. There's not a whole lot of footage of the beta that shows the Game Boy Horror's map, but the small bits we have do show it looked a bit different. Mainly just that it wasn't as colorful, and a lot of the rooms just wouldn't have been as color separated as they were in the final game. Shiver died in a fire. There's a theory that the ghost Shiver died by fire. After all these ghosts had to die in some way, and not many, if any, have been confirmed to die in a specific way, mainly just hints. And a lot of people believe that this one's was by fire, and it makes sense. Shiver immediately freaks out and gets super angry if his candle is lit. So this one's pretty straightforward. He probably died by fire. Luigi's Mansion Nintendo Power t-shirt. Now this one I was going to do an entry on, but I came across a really good, almost hour-long video on it by someone I really think deserves more subscribers, and I really liked their style. It was so in-depth that I didn't think I could really do it justice, that I got the person who made the video, Sean Bogue, to come on and do a little summary of their hour-long video on this Luigi's Mansion shirt. So without further ado, here's my first collaboration with another YouTuber, and this is Sean Bogue for the entry of Nintendo Power t-shirt.
Hey y'all, I'm Sean, and I'm in a video all about the most niche shirt in gaming history. The Luigi's Mansion glow-in-the-dark Nintendo Power promotional t-shirt was given out to fans for the newly released Luigi's Mansion game for the Nintendo GameCube back in 2001. After you signed up for a 12-month subscription of Nintendo Power for $19.99, of course. You would have to send a check to Nintendo of America along with either a slip from the original game box or from the Nintendo Power Player's Guide for Luigi's Mansion released alongside the game. Only one size was made, an adult large, and only a certain amount of these shirts were ever printed. Promotional t-shirts like this were made to sell the magazines back in the 90s and 2000s, and depending on the popularity, only a certain number of them were ever made. Over the years, the number of those shirts must have dwindled until only one had an online presence and quickly became a hot ticket item at an Instagram Live vintage video game apparel auction. While many other t-shirts of this time period have hundreds if not thousands of pictures, past purchases, and current listings online, the Luigi's Mansion glow-in-the-dark shirt only ever had one. Vintage apparel experts list the current price of this shirt at auction for over $1,000, making it one expensive shirt and one of the rarest collector's items in Nintendo's history.
Get Out of Here poster. On the original Luigi's Mansion on the GameCube, 2 occurrences of this Get Out of Here poster exist. The The first one is in the projector room, where if Luigi attempts to suck up the projector screen with the poltergust, he'll be met with a stretched out and eerie poster that knocks him on his butt and hurts him. It says, "Get out of here," on a very stretched boo. The second occurrence of this image is in the second floor washroom, where a monsters poster can be found. If the player attempts to suck up said poster, it'll change into the Boo Losses poster. Yeah, that's a hard name to pronounce, but again, it's the stretched out boo saying "get out of here." Just a really out of nowhere jump scare. Shivers loves Melody. Shivers, the ghost who most likely died by fire as mentioned earlier, is in love, or at least has a crush, on Melody, another ghost in the mansion. This time it's not a theory about Shivers, he literally just says, "Ah, the beautiful Melody will not even give me the time of day. What must I do to win her? Passion? Yes, that's it. I'll show her how much I burn for her. My unbridled passion will scorch her soul." So, bit of a creep. And he wanders the halls all around here. Just overall kind of a weird situation when it comes to Melody. I don't think she even knows he exists because she never mentions him at all in any of her dialogue. First person mode. Initially, the beta of Luigi's Mansion had a first person mode, and this was going to be an optional way of playing the game, but like pretty much every other yellow entry in this video, any entry that relates to the beta or unused assets, it was cut. But that didn't stop modders from adding it back in. And even though it's a bit janky since, well, you're not used to it and the game was changed to be fully third person, so not everything fits with a perspective, but it plays way better than you'd think and it's way more scary. How Mario was captured. The start of Luigi's Mansion is that Luigi won a free mansion in a contest he didn't enter, and this was all set up by King Boo. It was a ruse to get Luigi to the mansion where King Boo and the other ghosts were hiding. But Mario got there first. And while we can't see exactly what happened around the mansion with Mario, we do find his belongings scattered around the place. Which, okay, makes sense. He probably tried getting through the mansion and just lost stuff along the way. But most of the places of these lost items are behind locked doors. So did King Boo have the place fully unlocked before? Was it maybe really nice looking initially? I mean, that's what they did in the third game. They lured them in with a nice looking place and then it turned creepy afterwards. We don't know, but it was for sure at least slightly different before Luigi's arrival. At least a lot easier to get around. Paintings of portrait ghosts before their death. Throughout the mansion, you can see paintings that resemble the portrait ghosts. Well, these are most likely the ghosts before death. It's just super cool to include something like this. Even though some of the paintings aren't too obvious on what ghosts they turned into, a lot of them you can make pretty solid connections between, and some of them are just extremely obvious. Egad's Ladder. At the start of Luigi's Mansion, you get to go to Egad's lab, but not really explore it at all. If you're using Action Replay though, you can climb this ladder off to the left. Once up there, it's just out of bounds darkness, and while I couldn't find any footage of what it looked like exactly, in Map 0, an earlier entry, when wandering through there, you can also climb those ladders, and this is what it looks like. In normal full release Luigi's Mansion, you can't climb any ladders, but it's still fully programmed into the game. Speedy spirits during the blackout. There's some speedy spirits, these blue ghosts that run or hide from you, that are only catchable during the blackout of the game. And there's a misconception about these and all the golden mice that appear during the blackout. A lot of people seem to think that there's a second try afterwards, but no. If you don't get these during the blackout, you're just fully locked from getting them. 24-hour time limit. It's, I guess, a myth or rumor that the timer in the beta version of Luigi's Mansion was going to be a 24-hour time limit to beat the game in. In reality, it was just for the demo time, but there's a chance that they may have intended to keep it. That maybe this timer would be a 24-hour timer that would be for the whole day the game would be set in, or at least be a thing in the Hidden Mansion mode. Either way, it would have been cool to see this feature come back in some way, but I don't think it would have been a 24-hour time limit. Tier 4. This one's a mix of 3 entries, but they all link together. It's assumed and well portrayed that King Boo was the one who sent the letter to Luigi, tricking him to come to the mansion, but some fans think differently. There's a theory that Egad is actually the mastermind behind the whole mansion incident, and there's a few things in the game that sort of point to this. First of all, people question why his lab is right outside the mansion, which, okay, it doesn't look like the biggest lab, not necessarily too hard to get set up in a few days, but the inside is really complex. But that can be overlooked. After all, he's Egad, he's super smart, he could have built something to get that there on a short notice. But something isn't right about his knowledge of the paintings. He knows a lot about what's going on and how the paintings work. which seems fine unless you've played Mario Sunshine. It was released a year after Luigi's Mansion, so the events are for sure after this game's, but in Sunshine, Bowser Jr. says he was given a magical paintbrush by a man in a white coat, and it has the EGAD logo on it. But why would he do it? Well, EGAD could be a stereotype mad scientist. He could be the one to actually send the letter and get help from King Boo for an experiment. After all, the ghosts in the mansion are relatively normal. Most of them aren't hostile at all. Like mentioned earlier, they are living pretty normal lives. They read books, wander the halls, have meals. Some just want to exercise. I mean, they're kinda innocent here. So the theory goes that EGAD is secretly a mad scientist who has caused the events of multiple Mario games, and in this one is running an experiment on Luigi. And while most likely he's just helping Luigi and set up his lab super quick, what was he doing in Sunshine? That's really weird that he gave the magic paintbrush to the bad guy. Beta assets in WarioWare Get It Together. In WarioWare Get It Together, released in 2021, there's a Luigi's Mansion minigame where you do a sort of short version of what you do in Luigi's Mansion, catching ghosts. Well, this minigame takes place in the first Luigi's Mansion game, and with this being released 20 years after that game, they wanted it to look higher quality. And before they optimized the game for performance on release of the GameCube version, some of the beta assets were way more detailed than the launch ones. So having these still in their files, they just used the assets from the Luigi's Mansion beta that no one had their hands on before, and now fans could rip them from WarioWare and use them in the beta restoration project. Just a totally unexpected thing for them to do, and it's shocking they still have the files from 20 years ago. Area 4 Darkness. Area 4 being the last area of Luigi's Mansion, they wanted to make it a lot more spooky, so when opening the door to Area 4, the blackout happens, making it so the only things you can see aside from your flashlight is the lit candles, or relying on lightning strikes to light up the rooms from the outside. And speaking of these lightning strikes, for some reason, lightning happens way more when Luigi is idle, when you're not actively using the controller. I imagine this is probably to help keep the atmosphere of the game if you have to quickly do something else, or just to scare you if you have to take a break from the game for a minute. Mario bringing spare clothes. When exploring the mansion, you'll come across some items left behind by Mario. Most of these are articles of clothing. Some fans have dug way too deep into this. He was probably just bringing some spare clothes for his trip. His hat was even in the laundry room when it was being washed. I don't think it's anything creepy like a lot of fan theories tend to point to with this. Beta Mansion being on the title screen. The mansion shown in the title screen for Luigi's Mansion isn't the one we actually explore. It's the one from the beta. The one in actual gameplay and cinematics is much wider and taller. It's just weird that they didn't decide to change this for release if they thought the betas was better. Boo Woods. The official name for the woods on the outside of the mansion is the Boo Woods, and originally they were most likely going to be explorable, or at least more of the woods than just a graveyard. When clipping out of bounds, there's collision almost everywhere except for this one specific spot, almost as if a cave or some other cutout part of the woods was meant to be explorable. Scrapped 2-player mode. Most things cut from the beta of this game aren't too easy to show off, but this one oddly still fully works with action replay. If you put in a code, it'll start up the scrapped 2-player mode of Luigi's Mansion, and it works perfectly. It automatically binds the second controller port on the GameCube to this new Luigi that appears. I don't know why it got scrapped before launch, considering it works so well, and with action replay it's even in the final release. Maybe it was to make it scarier, maybe it's that it wouldn't make sense that there's two Luigis, like how they put in a Gooigi instead later on. Maybe Mario was originally intended to be the other character and they scrapped it to change the story. No one knows why this was cut, but it's weird that it still works so well. Miyamoto GameCube controller demo. There was a whole demo built for Space World that Miyamoto was showing off the different controls of the GameCube controller affecting the ghosts in Luigi's Mansion. This, alongside the other two Space World demos, are completely lost. Bogmire's Origins. After catching all of the Mr. Bones in the graveyard, if you walk up to this headstone, you can start the fight with the Bogmire. This ghost is very unique in that it was never living. It's, quote, a product of the mansion's fear and despair. He's not sure who to fear or what to despair these days. The Bogmire ghost was just created by King Boo and doesn't express really any emotions, which, yeah, it's a ghost. Sure, it doesn't express any, but the rest in the game very much do. The ghost design and backstory of being an artificial creation make it probably the most unique ghost in the game. Prototype GameCube image. An image of a GameCube prototype can be found left over in the files of Luigi's Mansion. It doesn't really look any different from what ended up being the final version of the GameCube, but it's weird that it's still in the game and it's super low resolution, 128 by 128 pixels. I don't know why they would have this in here. Maybe they were gonna show off the console it was on in the main menu. But yeah, there's no way of seeing this in-game. Luigi's Mansion was not planned for a Nintendo 64. Some fans seem to think that Luigi's Mansion was originally intended to be on the N64, and while in extremely early talks about making the game it was considered, it was never developed with the intention of it being on that console. The idea was scrapped super early on, and that's why it looks so good for one, and also works really well with a GameCube controller. Playing Luigi's Mansion with an N64 controller would have been awful. Beta room clear music. Originally, there was going to be a bit of music that played when you cleared a room. This was scrapped, but the music was still left over in the game's files, and it just sounds super creepy. Not rewarding at all. I'll play some of it for you here. Yeah, that wouldn't have been very good clear room music. Infinite Dust. The 3DS remake of Luigi's Mansion occasionally had some dust when running around the place, but the GameCube version was just insane. It was like every step you took, or even if you looked at the wall the wrong way, dust would just come flying out of it. I get the mansion's supposed to look old, but it's literally got infinite dust. How the boos were trapped. When you go into the storage room, tons of boos are freed as if they were trapped, and it's never stated that it was a planned ambush, but considering this whole building is made by King Boo, it for sure was. Sue P died in her sleep. The biography for the ghost Sue P is, what was meant to be a short nap seemed to have turned into an eternal rest for the sweet Sue P. So yeah, they just straight out tell us that this 7-year-old girl died in her sleep and became a ghost. Oddly dark for a Nintendo game. Luigi's Mansion vinyl. The process of making vinyls is super hard and it takes an extremely long time, so even when something is bootleg, it's super impressive if it works. Well, in 2020, a bootleg vinyl of the Luigi's Mansion soundtrack was sold, and aside from it looking amazing, being a transparent green, it also worked. It sold for $255, and from what I could find was one of a kind. Now there's some other fan-made ones of this that are cheaper, but they don't look nearly as cool as the lime green. Z crouch button. In the beta for Luigi's Mansion, the Z button was bound for crouching, a feature that didn't return in the final release of the game. Now the Z button is just used for checking the inventory and stats. And talking about the beta, ghost portraits in beta parlor. In the beta's parlor, there was different portraits up on the wall. What's strange though is some of these portraits feature characters that didn't get turned into ghosts like the rest. Specifically, the one with a top hat here on the right was never turned into a ghost, but may have been planned on turning into one in the future development of the game. It just never got finished. Real money. Throughout Luigi's Mansion, you collect money as a way to judge score at the end, but if the whole mansion is an illusion, how come at the end of the game, based on how much money you got, it changes what house Luigi gets? I guess not everything in the mansion is an illusion if Luigi gets to keep the money. Or King Boo just felt like letting him keep it. Boo and King Boo's secret cutscene. The original ending of Luigi's Mansion has you start the boss fight by opening this door when you're ready, having the key. But if you try and do it early, King Boo will be confused as to who you are, first thinking you're Mario, then realize you're Luigi and just blow you away alongside his other Boos, despite not being able to see them. Tier 5. Weird background noises and gallery music. The music for Luigi's Mansion is usually pretty spooky, except for the gallery. It's pretty cheerful compared to the rest of the game's soundtrack, but there's some weird stuff in the background of the music, like right here. It sounds like maybe some type of factory or scraping in the background, which doesn't make any sense for being in a gallery. Luigi with Poltergust in the 1,000-Year Door. This image was found of Luigi holding the Poltergust in the files of Paper Mario the 1,000-Year Door. Fans first thought this was a scrapped, never used sprite of Luigi, but it turns out that there's an extremely rare chance that in the audience, Luigi will be wearing the Poltergust. And most of the time it's hard to tell that he's even there, but yeah, he'll be wearing it. Harder to get F rank than A rank. When progressing through any Luigi's Mansion game, you'll naturally get tons of money, which usually means you'll at least get a D or C rating by default at the end of the game. But getting an F rank is just downright hard. You have to try to not get any gold, and it's pretty easy to get an A rank compared to this. You really just have to go out of your way to get no gold, and it's honestly pretty hard to get an F rank. Lightning in every room. When lightning strikes, it'll light up the whole room, which makes sense for most of the mansion with all the windows, but when you go down to the basement or a room without any windows, the lightning still lights up the entire room. They probably just didn't think about this, and it still helps the atmosphere if you're in the basement and the lightning goes off. You could pretty easily make up some sort of explanation in your head for it, like there's windows in the basement just leading outside. They probably just didn't think about this in making the game. The manual having a screenshot from the Japanese version. When making the manual for the English version of Luigi's Mansion, they got all the screenshots from the English version of the game, but forgot to change one that they just carried over from the Japanese manual. So the manual still works and the image in context makes sense, just the Japanese text on the image for an English guide really stands out. Unused fear states. There's still some leftover fear states in the files of the game that Luigi never used, and they look pretty good too, aside from some clipping. But yeah, the animations are still in the files, they just never got applied to Luigi. Unused mission mode. There's text in the Luigi's Mansion files that reads Koga mission mode, followed by various pieces of code that set up the main game after a file is selected on the file select screen. So this means they were most likely planning on having a mission mode like what they did in Dark Moon, but it never got finished. Picking up an item while EGAD is calling you glitch. When you catch a boo, EGAD will normally call you right away, asking if you want to save your game. To avoid this, as soon as you catch a boo, if you start vacuuming a cloth of some kind, it'll skip the text pop-up. This is used a lot in Luigi's Mansion speedrunning, and if you're interested in videos on speedrunning, I think they're super interesting how different games are done. I'd love to make one. Just let me know if you're interested in the comments. N64 Mario painting. The painting of Mario, where he's trapped, actually uses a render of him from Mario 64. When he's out of the painting and saved, it's a newer model. It's just weird they didn't use this one for the painting. Maybe it's just more iconic and in people's heads the N64 version. Was he a dream too? EGAD says this while telling Luigi he saw a similar looking guy go into the mansion, which he also believed could be a dream. The line just sticks out as being a bit eerie, and would also be super creepy and complete story changing if somehow Mario was another one of King Boo's illusions. Luckily, this isn't the case. Vincent van Gogh also created the ghost rats and bats. There's a theory that Vincent van Gogh is the one that made all the ghost rats and bats alongside all the other paintings that came to life. And it makes sense. After all, he did make most of the ghosts in the game. It's honestly just kind of weird they aren't listed as being created by him. It would make a lot of sense. Nintendo Power Luigi's Mansion render. Between Space World 2000 and 2001, there was a build of Luigi's Mansion that only Nintendo Power showed off. This build was much closer to what the final release of the game looked like, and I went ahead and put all the images here if you want to look at them. But yeah, it's extremely similar to Space World 2001 and was the biggest difference between builds at the time. Comparing Space World 2000 to this version of the mansion, they're extremely different. Luigi supports animal rights. This entry is referring to when Luigi examines the rug in the safari room with the Game Boy Horror. When he examines it, he says, "How could anyone treat an animal that way? I won't stand for it." So yeah, he supports animals' rights to not become a rug. Spanish sentence in Italian version of the game. For some reason in the Italian version of Luigi's Mansion, some of the text is left in Spanish. I have no clue why they'd do that. Maybe they were going over the Spanish version and just forgot to make a line Italian. Also, the creator of this Iceberg said they used Google Translate and they weren't sure if it was accurate that it was Spanish. I know a guy who is. It is accurate, don't worry. But yeah, they just left this in the game and never bothered to fix it. The dust took 6 months to program. When programming the dust in Luigi's Mansion, they wanted it to be as realistic as possible. So making the dust apparently took 6 months to program. And it's not just a standard animation, so it makes sense it'd take a while. But I don't think anyone was expecting them to have a dust counter off of every single particle of dust you vacuum to affect which visual animation it plays. Skull on Mansion's front door. Short entry, but for some reason there's a skull on the front door, like a knocker. I'd say it was spooky enough. King Boo didn't need to scare Luigi before he was already in the mansion. Just kind of weird. Inaccessible blackout ghosts. Once a blackout happens, the sitting room and guest room both have ghosts in them, but when the blackout happens, you can't get into those rooms anymore. It was most likely planned that you could get in there, just odd that they were left over. Bouncy ball ghost was used for the Shooting the Moon minigame. This is the ball ghost, a cut enemy from the game. Or sorta cut. The model was used for the Shooting the Moon minigame, so even if we didn't get this little guy flying around the mansion like a normal ghost, you can still see him in the game. Ghost Poster and Darkness. Floating in the darkness outside of the storage room is a painting. Here, I'll brighten it for you. Yeah, it looks like a possibly scrapped portrait ghost. This was probably planned on becoming an enemy and just got cut. But if you directly rip the texture from the files and zoom in on it, it says family written in red on this portrait. Luigi's breathing. When Luigi's in the dark, you can clearly see his breathing. This means either the mansion is super cold or was just a design decision to show how scared he was and heavily breathing all the time. Probably the latter. Promo flashlight. This is an extremely rare promotional flashlight for Luigi's Mansion given to select invitees at the E3 2001 showcase of the game. The glass of this flashlight is patterned to cast a GameCube logo, and the red on-off switch keeps the light off while pressed, mimicking the B buttons function in the game. It's just a super unique collectible, and there's very few of these out there. Prototype sold on eBay. There was a prototype version of Luigi's Mansion sold on eBay a while back, and it only sold for $350. And while sure that is a lot for a Nintendo game like this, it is also a prototype. That's crazy. Unfortunately, the files of the disc were never put online as the person who bought it never came forward, but this was the last ever time this thing was shown online, just in some random listing. I really hope someday someone speaks out about it and dumps the files online. It really sucks knowing that this is out there and that we don't get to access it at all. Tier 6. Luigi's Mansion 3 took ideas from the beta and development of Luigi's Mansion. Luigi's Mansion 3 took some features from the development of the first game and made them work on release. Sure, Luigi was in the 3DS remake of the first game, which some fans believe means that the remake is in an alternate timeline. Sure, it sort of makes sense with it kind of being completely game-changing, but it's just a gameplay feature, it doesn't affect the story at all. But yeah, Luigi comes back as a major part of the third game, and while in the process of conceptualizing the first Luigi's Mansion, it was mentioned that it was going to be a massive apartment instead of normal house, and with 3's setting being a massive hotel, looking like an apartment building, a lot of fans believe the apartment building idea, and Luigi being the 2-player that was cut from the first game, that these were just ideas put into the third game, and it makes sense. Bouncing Poltergeist straps. At some point during designing the Poltergeist 3000, it was going to have straps on it, so it'd be attached to Luigi. Why these got removed? No one knows. Possibly to make the game run better, or the devs just thought it looked better without them. Either way, they're still in the game. When playing the opening cutscene, you can see the cut straps of the Poltergeist bouncing up and down way off at the edge of the map. What's weird is that this animation isn't tied to anything at all. It's just bouncing for no reason. And after the cinematic, they disappear. Also, the best way to see this, and the footage I'm using is from a YouTube series called Boundary Break, which I just wanted to mention because it's really good and is now considered an official documentary on Google. But yeah, it's just weird that this was left in the game, and it would have looked really good being on Luigi. Beta game over screen referenced in Smash trailer. When Luigi gets scared and falls to the ground in the Smash Ultimate trailer for Castlevania getting added, it may look a bit familiar. Probably because it's basically the game over screen from the beta of Luigi's Mansion. It's for sure at least inspired off of it. The white eyes and facial animation, it's very similar. Welcome to Acid Theater. Luigi's Mansion contains an unused sound file of a voice saying welcome to being cut off and distorted, and it turns out this is actually an edited version of a commercial sound sample called badacid.wav. And the voice is saying, welcome to Acid Theater. What this could have been used for, I have no clue. Some fans seem to think it could have been used in the telephone room, and it would make a lot of sense, just weird that it never made it in. The unicorn statue idea is from the Ocarina of Time beta. On the 3rd floor of the balcony of the mansion, unicorn statues can be found, and they feel really out of place. They don't really fit the theme of the mansion, and a lot of fans speculate that the idea of putting this in the game was directly from the beta of Ocarina of Time, where very similar looking statues can be found and were never used. Nintendo Power Luigi figure. In the early GameCube era, a company named Joyride did a lot of collaborations with Nintendo and other gaming companies to make figures off their characters. They had figures from Super Monkey Ball, Zelda, and Halo to Metroid, Mario, and Luigi's Mansion. These figures were decently popular, but the ones for Luigi's Mansion were a Nintendo Power exclusive, so nowadays trying to get your hands on one of these figures can be extremely hard. The listing on eBay I found for the Luigi's Mansion one is $800 plus shipping. Also, if you add on the Mario Sunshine figure, this goes up to $7,000. These two figures are some of the most rare merchandise for the games, and it's solely due to them being Nintendo Power exclusives. Beta Ghost concepts reused for the final game. Like mentioned earlier, the tomatoes the chef ghost would have used acted the same as the bowling balls did and sorta got turned into them. This feature from the beta and some others like the sewer ghost turning into the spark ghosts were just repurposes of ideas that never came to fruition with these other ghost concepts. And for the last theory entry, the beta will be dumped. I hope so. Speculating about what all was in the beta for Luigi's Mansion is kind of frustrating, considering there's all this footage and there's just no file of it. I genuinely think in another year or two, inevitably when another big Nintendo leak happens, hopefully we'll get the beta. I just hope. Also, it's not an entry on the Iceberg, but Game Theory did a video on how much the entire mansion is worth, and it's worth $1,315,000, $433.51. So yeah, it's a lot. But for the mansion, honestly, that's kind of cheap compared to nowadays prices for a mansion that big. Dark Moon pieces. The whole story of Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, or just Dark Moon as I'm going to be calling it now, is, you guessed it, about the Dark Moon. At the start of the game, we see King Boo shatter this Dark Moon, and immediately after, all the ghosts in Evershade Valley start going crazy. So this moon pacified the ghosts in the valley, and now that it's broken, Luigi's goal is to get all of the pieces and repair the Dark Moon. Conveniently, all of the 5 different pieces are in different missions. Unlike the first game, Dark Moon has multiple mansions, 5 of them, and all of these mansions have different missions you can do. There's 34 overall, with one being in King Boo's illusion, and these missions are how you progress through the game. Like the first one is just getting the new Poltergust and learning how to defeat ghosts, and then the future ones get more complex as you go on. To some fans, having missions sort of breaks the immersion. It's a very controversial topic with this game. Next Level Games. Next Level Games is a company that made Dark Moon. They were founded in 2002 and have made a decent number of games. They did all of the Mario Striker games, Punch-Out for the Wii, and went on to make Luigi's Mansion 3 after doing Dark Moon. Needless to say, Nintendo liked their work, and now Nintendo is their parent company, as of 2014. So when we eventually get a Luigi's Mansion 4, it'll most likely be done by these people. EGAD's new bunker. EGAD has a brand new bunker for Dark Moon. His one in the first Luigi's Mansion was big and moderately high-tech, but this new one is a lot smaller, more high-tech. It's so high-tech that Luigi gets teleported into the mansion. The whole way of going throughout the different missions is using a teleporter. It's also used as the main menu for the game, and it looks like EGAD's head. Yeah, weird design. Evershade Valley. Evershade Valley is the big valley all the mansions are in. Some fans believe that this is the same valley which Luigi's Mansion 3 takes place in. But no, it just looks similar. Outside of the fact that all the mansions are here, we don't know a whole lot about this place. Also, all the mansions in this valley, if you take the first letters of their name and put them together, it spells out G-H-O-S-T. Yeah, just a little Easter egg spelling out ghost. The Luigi's Mansion 1 map. Despite the events of the first Luigi's Mansion being pretty traumatic for Luigi to say the least, he hung up the advertisement he got for the mansion on his wall. It's in the intro for all of maybe 3 seconds. They don't draw any attention to it, it's pretty easy to miss, but it's a nice reference to the last game, and it's the same texture of the pamphlet. Just used it as a decoration. Dual Scream. Instead of the Game Boy Horror in the first Luigi's Mansion, in Dark Moon we now have the Dual Scream, a play on the DS. It serves the same purpose as the Game Boy Horror, serving as a map and communicator that EGAD can constantly use. Poltergust 5000. Instead of the Poltergust 3000 we got in the first game, Luigi now uses the Poltergust 5000 for Dark Moon. The vacuum works pretty similar to the first games, but is a lot more powerful. But the main new addition of the 5000 is the Strobulb, the green thing on the back of the pack to charge and blast a flash of light to stun ghosts, instead of having to just point the flashlight at them like you had to do in the original. Personally, I prefer this one a lot. It's way more powerful in every way. EGAD lived in Gloomy Manor. In the opening for the game, we can see that EGAD has been living in Gloomy Manor, doing his research alongside the ghosts. Obviously, things went awry, and the ghosts went insane when the Dark Moon was split. But before that, EGAD was living a pretty calm, solitary life with ghosts in a creepy manor. Scarescraper. The Scarescraper is unlocked when you complete the mission Visual Tricks. It's a mode where you can play either locally or online with 3 other players, having 4 different Luigis. Each Luigi also has a different color, being green, blue, orange, or pink, and the 4 different colors are based on Luigi's alternate skins in the original Smash Bros, and they even have the colored poltergust to match their color scheme. The Scarescraper mode has 3 different difficulties, and after you go through 25 floors of the Scarescraper, you get a endless mode unlocked. There's different modes in the Scarescraper, like just having to defeat ghosts, or probably the most stressful one is a rush mode, where you have to find an exit in time, and it just gets chaotic towards the end. And this Scarescraper also made it to Luigi's Mansion 3, so it'll most likely be in 4 as well. Ghost types. There's tons of different ghost types in Dark Moon, so I decided to make a graphic to show them all off. Each type, starting with greenies, have strong variants. Alongside their base ghosts and strong versions, there's also greenies that have possessed other objects like sets of armors and even mummies that are considered their own version of ghosts. And there's also a golden greenie, being the only gold variant of a ghost type. And we've got slammers, the big, bulky, harder to defeat ones. Hiders, which, you guessed it, they hide everywhere and play hide and seek with you. There's gobbers, which will spit goo at you and they have way too much health. Sneakers, who will turn invisible and sneak up on you. Then creepers. The creepers can turn into puddles where they become invincible, and when you get close to them, they'll grab you and do a lot of damage. And lastly, of all of the ghosts, is of course Polterpup. Luigi's reliable, well, not so reliable at the start, he kind of just gets in the way, but eventually at the end of the story, reliable ghost dog companion. At the end of Dark Moon, Luigi adopts Polterpup and they become best buds, and he returns for Luigi's Mansion 3. Scarescraper ghosts. There's unique versions of the previously mentioned ghost types in the Scarescraper. They're different themes, so they're not really entirely new ghosts, but they do have some new abilities. I won't go over all of them considering there's 45 different ghosts, but they're all pretty unique looking, and I'm really shocked they put so much effort into the Scarescraper. This mode could have easily been a super basic mode you play for an hour or 2 and never return to. The Dark Light Device. Introduced in Dark Moon and staying for Luigi's Mansion 3, Luigi obtained the Dark Light Device. It sort of acts how those UV flashlights and pens you'd get from the book fair work. You shine something with it, being an attachment to the poltergust, and it reveals things the naked eye couldn't see. This became a really big mechanic for Dark Moon and Luigi's Mansion 3, and in future entries I'll talk about some concepts they had for this. They're insane. Upgrades. In the first Luigi's Mansion game, money was pretty much just score. It was nice to see a better ending with more money you got, but by no means was it necessary or really at all helpful. This changed in Dark Moon though. As Luigi gets money throughout the game, he can get upgrades to the Poltergust from EGAD. Just having any use for gold is a really nice step up from the first game, but upgrades are very nice. Luigi's Mansion 2 HD Remake. June 27th, 2024, the HD remake of Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon came out. Like pretty much every mainline Nintendo game, it runs and looks amazing on the Switch, and it's the gameplay I've been using for the background of this video. As much as I like the 3DS version, having an 800 by 240 screen for the entire video may not look the best. The Vault. Just like the gallery in the first game, the Vault is where you can see all the ghosts you've defeated and look at the different collectibles you've obtained throughout the game. It's not as good as the gallery, in that it's a menu instead of a room, but it's very nice that you can view any ghost there. Pretty much every picture I've got in the video of a ghost is from this menu. It's super easy to view what the ghosts look like. In the first game, it was just portraits of these iconic ghosts, but in here you can look all around the different 3D models of the ghosts you've caught. Year of Luigi. As the 30th anniversary of Luigi's first appearance, Nintendo held the Year of Luigi. It ran from February 2013 to March of 2014, and in this year, everything would be Luigi related. It was all promotional, so we got Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, New Super Luigi U, and Mario & Luigi Dream Team. Similar events like this have happened, like Sega had the Year of Shadow, where tons of Shadow-related things came out, but the Year of Luigi, sales-wise, did awful for Nintendo. It was really nice getting all this new Luigi content. I mean, the games were really good, some of the merch was pretty cool, but because of how bad sales were, I'm not sure we'll get another Year of Luigi. Tier 2. Luigi Statues. After you collect all 13 gems in a mansion, the Luigi statue appears in EGAD's vault. There's 5 overall, 1 for each mansion, and they appear to be made out of some type of crystal. These don't appear at all in the third game, but they were a nice incentive to complete all the gems in a mansion. Luigi's Mansion Arcade. Luigi's Mansion Arcade is a 2-player first-person version of Luigi's Mansion. Obviously, it's a lot smaller than the mainline game, and in a big arcade machine. You control it by using a actual physical poltergust, but overall, it's a pretty decent game. I mean, it's not nearly as good as the mainline games, but there is some really weird stuff exclusive to the arcade game that I'll talk about in future entries. King Boo follows Luigi. In the background of multiple levels, you can see that King Boo is following Luigi behind the scenes. It makes sense since King Boo is controlling everything behind the scenes, but we don't usually see him actually sticking anywhere nearby Luigi. I mean, in the first game, he was just sitting underground. Gloomy Manor elevator music. The company that made Luigi's Mansion also made Mario Strikers. And there's an Easter egg in Gloomy Manor that connects the two games. Here's the music from the Gloomy Manor elevator. And here's the pause screen music from Mario Strikers. Yeah, the music from Dark Moon is just a remix of Mario Strikers. I doubt many people notice this unless they're a massive Strikers fan, but there's also an extended version of it left over in the files of Dark Moon that was never used. They only used an extremely small portion of it for the elevator. Real animals. Luigi's Mansion is known for having tons of ghosts and even some ghost creatures, but there's also a good number of real animals, some of which are really weird. We've got the standard rats, crows, spiders, but there's also some weirder, not real creatures that aren't ghosts in this game. First we have fuzzballs. They appear in the secret mine portion of the game and can be pretty annoying at times. They're completely harmless, and they're usually sleeping when encountered, but when they wake up, they just continuously roll and run against Luigi. And if Luigi uses the poltergust on them, it just prevents him from being able to use it on anything else. It just gets stuck in the nozzle. Eventually they go back to sleep, but primarily serve as a cute annoyance. The second of the weird non-ghost creatures are the robombs. These robombs are weird sphere-shaped robots that'll sprint at you and explode. They're like bigger, rounder, scarier bombs. Speaking of scarier, the last of these weird non-ghost creatures is the carnivorous plant. There's a set of massive Venus flytrap-like plants that will try and eat Luigi. Not a whole lot to say about these guys. They're big plants and you can defeat them by feeding them this deadly hitchhiker plant, but something I did find odd is that, aside from this plant reappearing in Luigi's Mansion 3, I can think of 3 different games that all take place in a mansion with a killer plant you have to get past. That's not a lot of different times, but that's a very oddly specific circumstance that you wouldn't think would happen in too many games. EGAD emblems. While playing through Dark Moon, you can do different objectives to get EGAD emblems for your save. You get 1 by completing the main story, 1 by getting 3 stars on all the missions, and 1 by getting all the collectibles for the vault. They don't serve any use aside from just being a nice little display above your save, but it is really impressive if you manage to get all of them. Frankenstein Night. At the start of the Treacherous Mansion E1 mission, there's a cinematic that's a direct reference to Frankenstein. You can see 2 greeny ghosts trying to resurrect a knight with electricity, and shot for shot, it's just Frankenstein but with greenies instead. Just like Frankenstein, there's also a bit of an homage to Poltergeist. Warning, this clip I'm going to show is oddly flashy. It gave me a bit of a headache. But if you compare the start of Dark Moon to this scene in Poltergeist, they're extremely similar. It's very clearly a reference. King Boo overrides Pixelator. EGAD uses the Pixelator to transport Luigi in and out of mansions, using the main screen to choose the cameras around the mansions to teleport Luigi to. After Luigi defeated the tough professor as he's being pixelated back into the bunker, King Boo sabotages the Pixelator, pulling him into his own paranormal dimension. This all seems fine, but this does mean that King Boo can control EGAD's devices. So why not do it earlier? Could he have broken out of any type of imprisonment, just stopped the story at the start? We don't know. But he for sure has the ability to at least control the Pixelator, which is a very important part of the game. Luigi's Mansion Canon Rank. At the end of the first game, depending on what rank you got, you'd get a different mansion, using the funds that judge your rank. And the D rank ending looks exactly like the house Luigi had at the start of Dark Moon. So Luigi, in canon, got D rank in the first Luigi's Mansion game. Luigi's mannerisms based on Mr. Bean. Miyamoto stated in an interview that while making Luigi's Mansion, they decided to base Luigi's body language off of Mr. Bean. And if you compare how Mr. Bean acts to Luigi, it's clear that he was a massive inspiration for Luigi's behavior. I mean, it's near identical. Tower of Terror. The original name for the Scarecraper or Thrill Tower, depending on what region version of the game you got, was the Tower of Terror. But for obvious reasons, they couldn't use this name. Disney's copyright. So now we have a, in my opinion, better name of Scarecraper or Thrill Tower. Debug mode. In the files of Dark Moon, you can enable a debug mode, letting you access different scrapped features. And it's crazy how many things you can do with this, like using a level select, seeing cutscenes that never made it into the final game, getting to access unused missions. I mean, you can just access tons of scrapped content. Why they're still in the files? I don't know. The cutscenes alone add quite a lot of storage onto the game, so if you got it digitally, a lot of that storage on your 3DS was just useless. It was just unused cutscenes. Tier 3. Let's hope all the pixels make it this time. Once Luigi starts the first mission of Dark Moon, EGAD says, "Let's hope all the pixels make it this time." Some fans have dug a bit much into this, thinking that it implies some part of Luigi is left behind in the mansion, and that it'll turn into something bigger, but most likely it was a more throwaway line. Obviously, EGAD doesn't really care about Luigi's well-being, that's very clear, but I don't think this means a part of Luigi is stuck in the mansion. Silver keys. In the E3 build of Dark Moon, all keys, instead of being gold, were silver. There's quite a few changes from the E3 build, and we actually have a lot of footage of it, unlike the first Luigi's Mansion E3, but this is just one of the more minor entries. Later on, there was some crazy stuff that never made it into the final game that was in the E3 build. Ghostly geometry. Unlike the first game, the mansions in Dark Moon aren't just an illusion, but their geometry doesn't really make sense. Having rooms way too big to fit what the exterior portrays, rooms being where they wouldn't be able to fit, rooms being in between rooms where there wouldn't be any room, the layout of the game just not really making sense. I don't think this means it's ghostly. I think it's more a design standpoint. They just wanted it to be more unique, and I think that's for the better. While it's weird having 5 different mansions to go through, the mansions themselves are really well designed and fun to explore. And they're definitely unlike any other locations in other Nintendo games. Poltergust 4000. In Mario Kart DS, Luigi has the Poltergust 4000. I mean, it's obviously the Poltergust, but it's a kart form instead. They named it the 4000 to serve as a sort of in-between upgrade between the first and second game. The first game having the Poltergust 3000, Dark Moon having 5000, so this is a perfect in-between. Boffins. This is the Poltergeist, a rare gold-colored ghost, but in British versions of the game they're called boffins, which is sort of a slang term for scientist. Makes sense considering the ghost has a massive head, but they don't really do too many big name changes. This is by far the biggest one for the European version of the game. Scarecraper isn't in Evershade Valley. When we see Evershade Valley from above, you can see that the Scarecraper isn't there. The mode where you do multiplayer and fight all the different ghost types just isn't here. Aside from it being a different game mode, story-wise it'd have to be somewhere else. I mean, it's not visible in the valley, but also the ghosts are still hostile after you restore the Dark Moon. Where's the Scarecraper though? We don't know. There's nothing showing where it may actually be. We just have no information on where this building is. Sneakers are based on bashers. This is a basher, a cut ghost from the first Luigi's Mansion. From the limited footage we have on it, it would sneak up on you, pounce, and then act like a normal ghost. Well, if this sounds familiar, it's because the sneaker ghost is directly based off of it. Mechanically, it works the exact same. They pretty much just brought back the basher ghost for the second game, gave it a different name, and a bit of a redesign. Haunted Towers was once a third mansion. In the beta of Dark Moon, the Haunted Towers was originally the third mansion. This got changed to being the old Clockworks, probably to make the layout of the mansions make more sense, so you'd go from the more standard spooky levels to then the more unique ones later on. Also, with doing this, it lets them have Ghost spelled out with all the mansions. Fright Night. In the Scarecraper, one of the bosses is called Fright Night, and its description reads, "Rumor has it that this greenie comes from the Middle Ages, where he was a knight searching for the kidnapped princess. Sadly, wherever he went, she always seemed to be in another castle. obviously being a nod to the older Mario games, where Princess Peach was always in another castle. Unused Roompus Room song. This theme was intended to be in the Roompus Room, but was cut. And we thought it was just never gonna be used, but that was until the Luigi's Mansion arcade came out. When fighting the three sisters, you can hear the theme in the background. It's not super obvious, but if you pay attention, you can hear it. EGAD calls are skippable. One of the biggest complaints about Dark Moon and Luigi's Mansion in general is that EGAD calls you so much, but something that isn't pointed out to you is that you can just hit the start button to skip the calls. Yeah, one of the biggest complaints in the whole game is built in, and it has been built in for over a decade. Just hit the pause button and you don't have to deal with the hundreds of EGAD calls. Thieves in Secret Mine. In the mission D2 Rock Bottom, you get to explore the bottom of the secret mine, and in these secret mines, you can find a smuggler's or thieves' hideout. It has a painting, sets of armor, a treasure chest. People were for sure stealing stuff, but from where? The nearby mansions? Maybe things got moved around the mine? Who stole things and from where, we don't know. But it's a nice set of world building for this area, seeing that there was other stuff going on than just the ghosts. Luigi Circuit and Luigi Mansion 2 canon discrepancies. There's a bit of a discrepancy when it comes to what canon rank Luigi got at the end of the first Luigi's Mansion. While the start of Dark Moon shows him having the D rank house from the first game, like previously mentioned, the version of his mansion in the Luigi Circuit course in Double Dash shows the A rank one. So while in the actual Luigi's Mansion series, Luigi got D rank, outside of that, he got A. It's confusing and we still don't know which one's officially canon. Dark Moon's D rank makes a lot more sense, but why it was A rank in Double Dash, we don't know. Rare mission opening cutscene. There's a chance when you go into a mission that you'll get a rare pixelation animation. When going in, there's a small chance that Luigi will have a goofier or honestly just more painful entrance. Some are pretty simple, like Luigi being stuck on his back when he falls, and one of them even shows him without his hat on, having to pixelate it in later. But there's a good number of these and some of them are pretty rare to get, and you'll just have to continuously go into and leave a mission if you want to see them all. Orange Luigi YouTube. There's a YouTube channel called Orange Luigi that documents any interesting, out-of-bounds glitches or just weird glitches throughout the Luigi's Mansion games. Any footage you see of weird glitches in this Iceberg has a very high chance of being from them. It's just insane how much they post about Luigi's Mansion, and I respect the dedication. I mean, there's a decent amount of content to talk about and show off, but my goodness, a whole channel, that is impressive. Toad missions inspired by Zelda. In an interview with developers of Dark Moon, they stated that the missions that require you to lead Toads out of the mansion were inspired by leading Zelda out of the castle in A Link to the Past. Oh, and if you want a Zelda video, let me know in the comments. I could do a very, very long one on that. Glow-in-the-dark cover art. The initial release of the PAL versions of Dark Moon, UK and EU, had a glow-in-the-dark cover. This glow-in-the-dark cover was only ever exclusive to the PAL versions. If you were in the West when the game came out, you just couldn't get this really cool cover. Kalimba Tiki masks. In the treacherous mansion, there's greenie ghosts that can be seen holding spears with Kalimba Tiki masks on them. And these Kalimba are from an entirely different Nintendo franchise. They're from Donkey Kong Country Returns. Having something cross over from Donkey Kong into Luigi's Mansion is something I doubt anyone was expecting. Club Nintendo figurine. For the year of Luigi as a part of Club Nintendo, you could get this exclusive Luigi's Mansion figure, and only 5,000 of these were made. And if you have a spare somehow or don't want yours, you can for sure get a lot of money selling it online. While 5,000 at the time probably wasn't the worst to get, now it's extremely hard to get your hands on one of these. Early prototypes. The early prototypes of Dark Moon were very weird. They wanted to put a spin on the series, and some ideas suggested were making it a detective game, which, sure, I can see that being good. It would definitely fit Luigi's Mansion. But Nintendo was also approached by the devs wanting to possibly make it a clone of the game Gauntlet. I don't see how that one would have worked. The gameplay of Gauntlet does not at all match Luigi's Mansion. Pest Floor. Some other game modes for the Scarescraper were workshopped, and one of these was the Pest Floor mode. It would have Luigi killing tons of rats around different rooms, but but when this idea was brought up, it was immediately dismissed by Miyamoto and no real work was ever done on it. Haunt and Seek. Another one of the cut game modes for the Scare Scraper was Haunt and Seek. This one had a lot of time put into it and it would have been amazing. The premise was pretty much Pac-Man and Luigi's Mansion. Some players would be able to play as ghosts while one plays as Luigi. Luigi's goal was to collect different keys throughout the mansion while evading the ghosts. And the ghost's goal was to obviously stop Luigi, but he's Luigi, so he's got the poltergust to defend himself. Lots of time and effort was put into making this game mode, but it unfortunately got scrapped. It would be amazing to see this mode return in the future. I'm really shocked it got scrapped. It would have been amazing. Most Obscure Golden Spider. Most Obscure Golden Spider. There's an extremely obscure golden spider you can only get by staring through this hole in the wall. You have to look at the spider for a good 30 seconds, just waiting for it to get closer and closer. Then Luigi will back up and the spider crawls out of the hole. This one isn't necessarily hard to get, but it is extremely easy to miss and very time consuming. Tier 4. EGAD says the pixelator is largely untested when first using it on Luigi. Most likely just trying to make a joke, but I wouldn't be shocked if EGAD really just didn't know if it was gonna work or not. Throughout the series, it's shown that EGAD just really doesn't care what happens to Luigi. Just as long as he's able to help with EGAD's research, it doesn't really matter what happens to Luigi. Old Clockworks Closure. When Luigi visits the Clockworks, EGAD, in the beta of the game, says it's closed down due to a series of horrific accidents. Okay, weird. Well, can we see what happened with the accidents? Yeah. In the same beta build, when you get to all the gears at the top, you can see a lab coat stuck in them, suggesting someone may have gotten stuck inside of the gears and died. And off to the left, there's something red that we can't really make out, but it's clearly dripping. Could it be blood? Well, we don't have the old build, but looking from the footage, it really looks like it. This was a very violent implication. I'm not shocked at all it got cut from the final game. The Mammoth, Polar Bear, and Octopus. In the Treacherous Mansion and Secret Mine, you can come across different creatures that appear to almost be dead and alive at the same time. A perfect example of this is with the mammoth in the Ice Age exhibit. When you interact with the extinct creature by using the vacuum on the mammoth's trunk, it'll then wake up and fling Luigi to the gargoyle roof section. The polar bear is also creepy. Instead of looking like it could be fine, this time the polar bear's already been turned into a rug, and when you interact with it, it'll roar at you. And the octopus mentioned for this entry even grabs Luigi. It's really weird seeing these creatures move. I mean, you'd assume they'd be possessed in some way, but no ghosts come out of them. They're just kind of half alive. Gloomy Manor's extra rooms. The Gloomy Manor has a ton of rooms we can't access. If you look at the manor from the outside, you're able to see way more rooms in the house than we can actually go into. It might have just been game design purpose to make the mansion look better, or it might have been that in some early build of the game, a lot of these rooms were accessible but had to get cut for time constraints. Luigi's left arm. If you make Luigi call for Mario while starting an animation, like picking up an object or answering a call from EGAD, his left arm will go completely limp, just staying at his side. Everything with the EGAD call animation seems to trigger a lot of weird glitches. Puzzle Swap Panel Video. For the 3DS, Nintendo created the Street Pass system, where you can meet other 3DS users by getting near them. Like walking on the street with your DS, going to school or something, you'd get a little ding and you'd see someone else's 3DS Me on your Street Pass. And different games you'd play on your 3DS would give you different puzzle pieces that you could either trade or use to unlock different things in Street Pass. Like the video playing right now is a video you'd get when you completed the Dark Moon puzzle. It was a pretty short video of Luigi, Polterpup, and a Greenie Ghost chasing each other around the mansion Scooby-Doo style. Simple, but nice. Early lab screenshot. There's a screenshot from the E3 build of Dark Moon that showed what the lab originally looked like in early development of the game. Upon final release, it's a bit more simplified, has less big red monitors, added a water cooler off to the left, and actually has the Dark Moon piece tracker off to the right. Why they changed it so much, I don't know. Personally, I prefer the beta one. It looks way more futuristic, but the Dark Moon tracker was for sure needed. Fuzzball Slide. At the end of the Secret Mines, you can perform a glitch where if you use a vacuum on a fuzzball while entering this cutscene, you can get Luigi to have some momentum in the cutscene, and he'll just start sliding around the room, not losing this momentum at all. Normally, obviously, you can't move during a cutscene, but by doing this, he just slides everywhere. The possessors are manifestations of each mansion. Possessors are special ghosts that only show up in Dark Moon, and these ghosts have the power to possess anything they see. There's 5 of these ghosts throughout the 5 different mansions, and each drops a moon fragment. Well, there's a theory that these possessor ghosts are manifestations of each mansion, possibly being the guardians of their mansion before the moon was shattered, and it makes sense them being a manifestation of their mansion. Each one of these possessors has a very different personality and acts very different in the fights, like how every mansion is extremely different. How was Mario captured? In the first game, Mario was going to the mansion that Luigi received as a supposed reward, and that's how he got captured, getting there before Luigi to only find out it was a trap. But we don't know how Mario was captured for Dark Moon. There's quite literally zero explanation as to why he's there, just that he was captured by King Boo again. Super Mario 64 DS is a prequel. Stay with me here because this theory is a bit complex. In Mario 64 for the DS, there's a level called Big Boo's Haunt that you can only access by defeating a Big Boo who has a bird cage inside of them. And inside this bird cage is a mansion. The mansion is by far one of the creepiest parts of Mario 64, but something's kind of weird about this level, outside of the man-eating pianos, that is. If you look out the sides of the cage, which, yeah, you shrink down into the cage to get into the level, you can see this dark forest with a purplish blue sky. Now, having an odd-colored sky in Mario 64 isn't completely out of the ordinary. I mean, going through all the different paintings that are their own sort of realms, it makes sense. A lot of weird skies. But this isn't a painting, it's a bird cage. And the sky in the courtyard you find this bird cage in isn't dark and creepy, and doesn't have trees like this, so it's definitely not just nighttime. So where is this? Well, for this theory, some fans believe that this cage is a teleporter. It doesn't work the same as a painting. This is a real place in the world of Mario, and that place is in Evershade Valley. I mean, the whole point of going in here is to unlock Luigi, so outside of the mansion theme, it is his level, and the one who locked him in here is a Big Boo? Yeah, not King Boo, despite having the same appearance and laugh. I really think Nintendo just didn't want to have a connection between this and Luigi's Mansion at the time, considering it was a new series. But considering this was probably meant to be King Boo, and Luigi was captured by him and put in a mansion, most likely with different types of ghost. I mean, pianos and books don't grow teeth on their own and start chasing you. So is this a prequel to the first Luigi's Mansion? Maybe some other point in the series? I mean, in theme, yes. Story, up for debate. Let me know what you think in the comments. As for theories go and different icebergs, this one's for sure one of the most interesting I've come across. Also, there's a longer theory video on it in the description. Painting inconsistencies. In Mario 64, Mario can obviously enter and exit a painting whenever he wants to, but for the Luigi's Mansion series, he can't. If anything, the characters in Luigi's Mansion are terrified of being put in a painting. So it's gotta be different from Mario 64. But why? It's obviously King Boo setting up these paintings and not Bowser this go around, but you'd think with both games being paintings that they might be similar at all. But no. My personal take on what might be going on is that the paintings in Luigi's Mansion are of a character themselves, while the paintings in Mario 64 are of locations, meaning if one were made in Mario 64 of a character, that's obviously a trap of that character, just like Luigi's Mansion. Whilst if it's a location, that makes it its own sort of realm, its own world in the painting. EGAD's lab funded by Star Beans. Between Luigi's Mansion 1 and 2, Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga was released. And in this game, you can come across a Star Beans coffee shop, and it turns out this shop is owned and managed by EGAD, and he runs it to fund his ghost research. So without this little coffee shop, he might have not had the money to run his research at the start of Dark Moon, which would have changed the entire series. The ghosts are unique life forms. The ghosts in the first game, except the creations by Van Gogh and Bogmire, are described as having died in some entries. So the portrait ghosts being normal ghosts makes sense. They just passed on and turned into ghosts. They were for sure people at some point. But the ghosts in Dark Moon are different. They don't seem to come from once being people, and they all have different types of species of ghosts. So this theory is that these ghosts are unique life forms, not people who died and turned into ghosts. And while there's not a whole lot supporting it, it is interesting. The first game's ghosts were 100% at one point living, and all acted very differently because of that. They all had their own stories, personalities, but these ones seem more like odd creatures that aren't a stereotype ghost. there's some other being. Unused room under the clockworks. In the E3 trailer for Dark Moon, there was a room that was filled with sand and had a mummy ghost. This was cut before release, but would have been a really interesting room. Some say it was cut because it was possibly too scary for the game, and we don't know why it was cut, but we for sure missed out. Having a more desert-themed room would have been really cool. Poltergeist on Gloomy Manor Stairs. Instead of the hider ghost scaring you going up the Gloomy Manor Stairs, in the beta it was instead a poltergeist. They most likely changed this to give the hider ghost more encounters, and have the poltergeist not be as common. As they are pretty rare throughout the game, having them less makes them stick out a lot more. First meeting Icebreaker. Apparently, and this story has been told by the devs, so it is true, when the development team met each other to start making Dark Moon, since they didn't all know the same language and it was a bit awkward, as an icebreaker, one of the devs went up to the whiteboard and drew a wiener, and just made everyone burst out laughing. For sure not an icebreaker anyone would normally think of, but it resulted in a really good game at the end. Spirit World. In development of making the dark light feature with a flashlight, originally it was a much more ambitious idea. Instead of using it to get collectibles here and there, it was going to be a whole separate world or dimension called the Spirit World, inspired from the Dark World from Zelda: A Link to the Past and Dark Aether from Metroid Prime 2. Yeah, instead of it just being used to find invisible collectibles, there was going to be a whole other dimension you could visit. We don't know what this other dimension or world would have looked like, but it would have most likely looked really cool. This is for sure the biggest scrapped feature of the game. Luigi's Mansion Arcade Bad Ending. The bad ending for Luigi's Mansion Arcade is kinda really sad. In this ending, once Luigi defeats King Boo, he goes home with Polterpup to, enjoy life and wait another 6 years for Luigi's Mansion 3 to come out. But after that wholesome bit, it shows that Mario is still in his painting, completely left behind and forgotten. Yeah, it just ends with Mario being stuck there and Luigi to never return. Kinda intense for a Nintendo ending. Even if it is in an arcade game, that's really dark for Nintendo. The Last Resort. Instead of a big mansion or 5 smaller mansions, Luigi's Mansion 3 takes place inside of the Last Resort, a skyscraper hotel consisting of 17 different floors. The owner of the resort, who invites Luigi and his friends along, including Polterpup of course, is Helen Gravely, a ghost who idolizes King Boo, and she's the one who freed King Boo from his painting after his defeat by Luigi in Dark Moon. Helen, admiring King Boo and wanting to help, sent Luigi a letter promising a stay at the Last Resort, telling him to invite any of his friends and family. Once everyone got to their rooms and settled in for the night, Helen and King Boo put their plan into action, capturing Mario, Peach, and the 3 Toads. Then, when Luigi went to find out what happened to everyone, he was greeted by Helen and Boo at the RIP Suites. This time, King Boo actually seemed to have a decent plan. He was getting ready to trap Luigi in a painting, but like Luigi normally does, he ran away, escaping to a laundry room down a chute in the wall. To slow down Luigi, Helen scattered the elevator buttons throughout the hotel, and that's where the game really starts, getting the different buttons to slowly make your way up and up the tower. Gooigi. Gooigi is weird and where he was first introduced. Lore-wise, it's the 3rd game, but time-wise, he first showed up in the 3DS version of the first Luigi's Mansion. Gooigi is a clone of Luigi that has a lot less health, but can do certain things normal Luigi can't. Doing things like passing through bars, grates, a lot of things most humans wouldn't be able to do. And we even have some backstory on how this Gooigi was made. There's a part of Nintendo's website made to promote Luigi's Mansion 3, and on the site were different comics, like this one showing how Egad discovered the new element he labeled goo. It was found completely on accident when he accidentally spilled coffee onto a blend of greeny ghost energy. Then this newly discovered goo element was combined with the data from the pixelator gathered in Dark Moon. And now we have Gooigi. Like I said though, he was first introduced in the first Luigi's Mansion on the 3DS. Yeah, the introduction of Gooigi was technically in the 3DS remake of Luigi's Mansion 1. Gooigi was just made to be someone to play as for multiplayer. Outside of that, lore-wise, he was in between 2 and 3, and he becomes a massive part of Luigi's Mansion 3, needing to use him multiple times on every floor. Portrait Ghosts Return. One of the best parts of the original Luigi's Mansion game is that the ghosts were all different and had unique personalities. And while people love the more weird creatures that the ghosts were in Dark Moon, lots of fans miss the unique portrait ghosts. So Nintendo combined both of them, having brand new unique ghosts that were very similar to the portrait ghosts in 1, and having the more species-like ghosts from Dark Moon actually being the ones that Luigi captured. Helen freed King Boo and all of the other ghosts that Luigi had captured in the second game. Unfoldable lab. Instead of having a pre-established, already built lab like in the first 2 games, EGAD this time has a portable, unfoldable lab setup. Unfoldable's a bit of an understatement though, as it's still fully metal and more advanced than the last ones. And after obtaining the 4th floor's elevator button, EGAD introduces the shopping network to this lab, which allows Luigi to buy gold bones, boo finders, and gem finders for 1,000 gold apiece. He also gives Luigi the ability to warp to the lab from anywhere in the hotel, instead of having to travel all the way back to the garage every single time. EGAD painting. When you come across EGAD, he's trapped in a painting. Luigi didn't even know he was in the last resort in the first place. You're able to free him, but this is the first time he's ever been in a painting. Him, alongside everyone else you came with, are trapped in these paintings, aside Polterpup. But when you talk to him, you find out that, alongside Luigi and the rest of his friends, he was also lured into the last resort, and lured him in by playing on his ego. Slam. Instead of simply waiting to be dragged around or hitting A occasionally, in this Luigi's Mansion, Luigi has the ability to slam ghosts to the ground while vacuuming them, and this does a lot of damage. Damage to the ghost itself, yes, but also other ghosts you slam them into. You can also use this slam to get through different areas. Instead of just using the normal vacuum and slamming the ghost, you can get an add-on called the Suction Shot where you can slam things like briefcases and unlock new areas. There's a lot of entries that are just talking about the different ghosts, so I'm combining them here. The Goob is what the standard greenie from the last game is, but blue now. Yeah, there's nothing special with this one, it's just a basic ghost, but instead of green, blue. Then we have the Hammer, which, if it looks familiar, it's pretty much just a slammer. Instead of the circular design, it's now a box shape, and it's for sure a good design, but it's pretty much just a slammer. Then we've got the Slinker, which is very much a newer version of the Hider from Dark Moon, but design-wise, this one really sticks out. It acts like the Hider, almost exactly the same, but looks a lot different. Unfortunately, you don't get to fight this one too much, it's quite rare, but I'd say this is my favorite out of the new ghost design-wise. Outside of the color being different, just the whole shape of it, it feels very separated from the Hider. Then we've got the Oozer, which is also pretty unique, in that it's not an extremely similar or copy of older ghosts. The Oozer's extremely fast and can hide anywhere, and it also throws objects at Luigi. This ghost is by far the most disorienting to go against. It's unlike a lot of the other ghosts and has a really creepy design. Lastly, for the common ghosts, we have the Trapper. If you thought the Slinker was rare, this one's somehow even more rare. It's only seen about twice throughout the entire game, and it's only when Luigi enters rooms, trapping him and holding him hostage, while Luigi has to come in and save the day. This is the most, I guess, separated ghost, in that it doesn't really act like any other ghost we've seen throughout the games. Scream Park. The Scream Park is a place where you can play 9 different multiplayer games in Luigi's Mansion 3. There's simple modes like Ghost Hunt where you're competing to catch as many ghosts as possible, and there's some more odd ones like Desperate Measures where the game is just balancing weights. The Scream Park is a really nice post-game for Luigi's Mansion. Granted, you have 3 other people, but it's pretty much like a sort of mini Mario Party within Luigi's Mansion. Scare Scraper. Returning from the last game, the Scare Scraper is back. The Scare Scraper gets unlocked once you unlock Luigi. The colors of the 4 Luigis remain the same as the last games, but now only their hats and undershirt are recolored. While the Scare Scraper in 3 is very similar to Dark Moon's in a lot of ways, one of the biggest additions is the inclusion of Luigi, so that makes it possible to play Scare Scraper with up to 8 different people, with the Luigis matching the same color scheme of their recolored Luigis. In this Scare Scraper, there's 6 different modes, being Capture the Ghost, Rescue the Toads, Defeat the Crows, Collect the Money, Capture the Ghost Rare, and Defeat the Boss. All pretty self-explanatory. Originally, this mode could only be played through 5 or 10 floors, but in 2020, there was an update that made it to where you could go through 20 different floors, and lots of new ghost types were added as well. Which, yeah, unique ghosts return for this as well. There's not as many as there were in Dark Moon, but it still brings a lot of variety to the Scare Scraper. Polter Kitty. Just like how there's a ghost dog, Polterpup, there's a ghost cat as well. This is Polter Kitty. Helen Gravely's ghost cat. They don't appear too much throughout the game, but when they do, they'll occasionally steal elevator buttons and are just a bit of a nuisance. When you end up fighting Polterkitty, the cat kind of goes insane. It turns into a massive werewolf-sized cat that you have to surprise in a pretty scary encounter, surprising it by hitting it with your poltergust right as it's about to claw your entire back off. So dogs aren't the only animals that can turn into ghosts in this series, and if we get more ghost animals like this and the dog, they may be really scary like this one is. This one's for sure way scarier than Polterpup. Tier 2, Kaiju Goob. On floor 8, there's a Kaiju Goob boss, a ghost dressed up as a kaiju or basically big monster. Just a bit of a nod to older monster movies like Godzilla. You'll notice later in this Iceberg there's a lot of references to other movies and shows that the developers liked. Not dark enough. The Luigi's Mansion franchise has changed quite a bit throughout the games. The first game was pretty much all portrait ghosts and was pretty dark and kinda scary. The second introduced newer non-portrait ghosts and had 5 mansions instead of 1. But a big change some fans complain about is the darkness of the games. The first game is very dark. Stereotypical, dark, scary mansion. But the third game is oddly bright. Sure, there's still dark spots and some bits can be scary, but tons of lights are still on, and most of the rooms that have their lights flicked off are still very easy to see through. It's not a massive thing that gets brought up a lot, but some fans are very adamant that the first will always be the best purely on how much darker it is. Mall plushies. On floor 3, the mall floor, in one of the stores you can see plushies of different Nintendo characters, like King Boo and Piranha Plant. There's not too many characters here, but it's a nice nod to other parts of the Mario franchise. They'll fly off the shelves. Just like how the first Luigi's Mansion had the Game Boy Horror and Dark Moon the Dual Scream, this time Luigi has the Virtual Boo, a play on the Virtual Boy. Egad, when telling Luigi about this creation, says they'll fly off the shelves. If you don't know, the Virtual Boy was one of the biggest failures by Nintendo. Although it was revolutionary and really the first big stepping stone for VR, it did terrible. It ran awful, could only display red and black, uncomfortable on your face. I mean, this console was just terrible. So this is a bit of a joke nod to how bad it did. Looking back, it was pretty revolutionary, especially for the history of VR, but that thing, wearing it, I don't recommend it. It's awful. Disco Vault. On floor 14, there's a secret disco vault. You have to do a puzzle where you swap between Luigi and Gooigi, stepping on different panels that aren't lit up. But once you go through all of them, the panels turn into stairs, leading down to this underground vault. And this place is never really hinted at. It's more of just a nice secret that happens to have a lot of gold for whoever finds it. Since 1983. It's hard to see, but on the pizza boxes in Mario's room at the start of the game, it says since 1983, and 1983 was the year that Luigi was invented. In the arcade Mario Bros. Ghosts posing as hotel staff. At the start of the game, when Luigi and everyone else arrive at the last resort, there's staff that welcome everyone, but they seem a bit off. You can't really see any expression on their faces, and they kinda just bob up and down while waiting around. Well, it turns out that these staff are ghosts. Ghosts just dressed up with face masks and hotel uniforms. With Helen Gravely being the owner, it makes sense, but it's still oddly creepy. Their masks are just unsettling. I don't know, it's really off-putting. The Ring Scene. On floor 8 of the last resort, called Paranormal Productions, there's tons of references to other media, like different horror movies. One of the most blatant and obvious of these is The Ring. There's a bit of an homage to it, with Luigi entering different TV screens, and you could for sure call that a reference, but there's an extremely obvious one with actually being able to see Sadako, the girl in the ring, coming out of this well that shows up on the TV. If you compare the two, the well and entire scene setup in Luigi's Mansion is pretty much the exact same from The Ring, and it's a bit of a jump scare seeing Sadako just popping out when you get close. It's kinda similar to what they did with Poltergeist and Dark Moon. The devs just love referencing other popular horror movies. Diamond Plunger. After collecting all the different gems throughout the game, Luigi obtains the Diamond Plunger, an upgrade to his new suction shot ability. This new suction shot is able to fire a plunger that Luigi can pull on with a vacuum. Like I said earlier with the slam, this is how you solve a lot of puzzles. But yeah, when you get all the gems, you can unlock a diamond version of it. Unfortunately, it doesn't act any different, it's purely an aesthetic change, but if you really want a diamond plunger, you have to get every single gem on every single floor. Elevator Gloomy Manor Remix. The music you're hearing now is the music that plays in the elevator of The Last Resort. It's a remix of the Gloomy Manor theme from the last game. Not a whole lot to say about this one, just a nice elevator remix, and I'll be playing it for the next couple entries. Everyone loves Paranormal Productions. Paranormal Productions, the previously mentioned floor 8 of the resort, tends to be a favorite floor by a lot of different fans. Out of all the different floors, this one's extremely unique and just has a lot more personality than a lot of the other floors. Having tons of different Easter eggs, a fun layout, a lot of cool mechanics. It's my personal favorite, and for most people who've played this game, it's also theirs. Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon poster. When first entering the 8th floor, there's multiple different movie posters you walk by. And aside from one of these being a reference to Punch-Out!, another game made by Next Level Games, the devs of the series, there's also a poster for Dark Moon. On the left here, you can see Luigi staring up at King Boo, just terrified. There's also another poster on the right that I assume is a reference to Mario Strikers. It looks extremely similar, and it's another game franchise that Next Level Games does. Only 3 ranks. In the first Luigi's Mansion, when completing the game, you'd get a rank ranging from A to H, and even adding an S rank with the 3DS version of the game. But Luigi's Mansion 3 only has 3 ending ranks, being an A, B, and C. Lots of fans were disappointed with this, and yeah, it just kinda stinks. I don't really know how they'd go down to H with this resort, but it'd be nice to at least see another rank or 2. Boo Torch. After catching all the different ghosts throughout the last resort, Luigi unlocks the Boo Torch, or Boo Flashlight. Instead of the normal, standard, just light coming out of Luigi's flashlight, now it shows a faint image of a Boo when you shine it onto a surface. It's a nice cosmetic change, like the Diamond Plunger, but also like the Diamond Plunger, it doesn't act any differently. Morty's Film. If you don't immediately catch the director ghost, Morty, and instead come back to him later on after the kaiju fight, he'll have finished the movie he was making. So when you go and see him, you can see this black and white Luigi versus kaiju movie. It's a nice Easter egg, and I doubt many people have seen it. I mean, you have to kind of go out of your way to see this movie. Paranormal Productions Spider Queen. The Spider Queen from Dark Moon's Gloomy Manor returns in Luigi's Mansion 3. When in Paranormal Productions, Luigi has to get a megaphone for the director, and this megaphone is in a box filled with spider webs. And when you eventually open the box, you'll see the Spider Queen herself. Just a massive, scary, non-ghost spider that Luigi has to fight. Crueler Mall Cop. Crueler is a big mall cop ghost. That's one of the most iconic ghosts in the game. A lot of fans speculate that his design was inspired off Paul Blart from Mall Cop, and yeah, I could see it for sure. Their appearance, lack of experience with their work, personalities, they're both extremely similar. And while it's never stated if this ghost was directly inspired off the movie or not, seeing how much the devs like to reference other movies, especially with Paranormal Productions, I wouldn't put it past them to make a whole character purely because of Paul Blart. Mini Goobs and Hammers. Every now and then you can come across mini versions of ghosts, like Mini Goobs and Hammers. They're not at all difficult one-on-one, they're actually pretty easy, but they usually appear in hordes, so while 1 or 2 of these may not be that bad, when they spawn in 5, it can get very overwhelming very quickly. EGAD's Research Journal. As a part of promoting Luigi's Mansion 3 coming out, an addition to the Nintendo site was made called EGAD's Research Journal. It was just filled with different comics giving more insight into EGAD's personality and the upcoming Luigi character. Comics like this are how we know that Luigi was made by mistake, from spilling coffee onto a blend of greeny ghost energy. Promotions like this, in my opinion, are some of the best because they give a lot of lore about characters that we would have just never gotten in the game. E.T. Bike. Just like how there's a reference to The Ring and some other movies throughout Paranormal Productions, there's a reference to E.T. during the firefighter scene you can go through. On the right here, you can see a bike with a basket in the front and a blanket covering something kinda weirdly shaped. It looks exactly like the bike from E.T. did, and the thing under the blanket, I imagine, is E.T., or at least something that's shaped extremely similar to him. Brick Block. On floor 14, if you have Luigi playing music on this wall, you can see a brick slide out. If you take Luigi underneath it and jump up and down constantly, you'll see it's a block from the Mario games, and every time you hit it from underneath, you get a coin. Tier 3, Twin Peaks floor. On the 11th floor of The Last Resort, beside the carpet, you can see the actual tiled floor. This design is known as a chevron floor, and it was made extremely popular by the show Twin Peaks, which explaining Twin Peaks is kinda hard because it's extremely weird, but by far the most iconic area in the show is this red room that's just filled with red curtains and this really almost trippy looking chevron floor. If this room wasn't so iconic just in pop culture, it would for sure just be a normal floor design, but seeing how they reference so many other things in this game, it's for sure a connection to Twin Peaks, or at least a nod to it. Carpet glitch. When Luigi's Mansion 3 first released, it was pretty glitchy. Not terrible, but there was some funny glitches that you can't do anymore. One of these being the carpet glitch. Sometimes carpets would just spin everywhere and glitch out. There were a good number of these weird glitches that only happened in the first version of the game, the 1.0 launch. Since then, most of these have been patched out. Giant King Boo. Throughout the Luigi's Mansion games, King Boo has been the bad guy for every single one, which, yeah, makes sense. He's the big bad ghost who wants to capture Luigi. But there's something kind of odd about all of his different appearances. Game by game, he's grown in size. In the first game, he was the size of a normal Boo. Dark Moon, he got a bit bigger than Luigi. And in 3, he is just massive. While it's never described why he gets bigger, fans have some theories. The biggest theories for why this happens is that, number 1, his size represents his ego, showing him getting more and more confident throughout the games, and 2, showing his power, which I guess you could just tie those two together. Throughout the games, he gets more and more powerful, and it just makes him more powerful and big of a ghost. While it's most likely just a design decision to make sure he always looks intimidating, I could for sure see the devs making this a part of the story. Boo constantly gets more powerful throughout the game, so it would make sense to make him look bigger. Gooigi is invincible. With how Gooigi works, always coming back to the Poltergust pack, it makes him invincible. No matter what happens to him, the gooey Luigi will just never die. Maybe there's something that'll kill him in the future, but at this point, there's seemingly no way of getting rid of this goo element. And Luigi, in theory, could live forever. Donkey Kong Treadmill. On floor 13, there's a massive gym area, and in this gym are tons of different weights, bikes, treadmills. I mean, it's massive. And one of these treadmills has a reference to Donkey Kong. After you finish running on this third treadmill here, you'll hear this tune play. And that's the music from Donkey Kong when you pick up the hammer. Egad's Marilyn Monroe pose. When you first rescue Egad and are escorting him to his bunker in the garage, if you flash him with a flashlight, he'll do different famous Marilyn Monroe poses. There's not any lore reason as to why he'd do this. I mean, he's never even talked about her, but every time you flash him, he does one of her poses. The rest of Egad's collection. If Egad was kidnapped by King Boo and Helen Gravely, what happened to his collection of ghosts? Well, they were stolen. Helen says his whole collection was stolen alongside King Boo, so all the ghosts Luigi worked so hard to get in the first 2 games are just gone. So will the old portrait ghosts maybe eventually return? Maybe even greenies? We don't know. But in a Luigi's Mansion 4, hopefully that'll come out at some point, they might bring back some of the older ghosts. Hidden radio tunes. Throughout the different floors, you'll come across multiple different radios, and these radios will play remixes of the main theme. There's a house version, jazz version, blues. They're just really good, and I'll be playing them as background music for this entry and the next few. Wii U game. When first making Luigi's Mansion 3, the Wii U was the main console, and through a series of delays and the failure of the Wii U, Nintendo and Next Level Games decided it'd be better to wait to release it on the Switch. This was for sure the right decision. I mean, if it was on the Wii U, it wouldn't be the worst, since every Wii U game seemingly just gets ported to Switch for $60, but it was definitely a good decision releasing it while the Switch was already pretty established. It for sure helped sales and make sure the game was actually ready for launch. Scrapped Grand Lobby designs. As a part of the DLC, you can see concept art for what the Grand Lobby originally looked like. The original concepts for the Grand Lobby kind of remind me of Epic Mickey in its color palette and kind of creepiness in some ways. In some ways, I do wish we got this for the final game, but seeing the last resort being so nice when you get there, I think design-wise it was for the better that they didn't use a concept art one. The Shining Carpet. If you've ever seen The Shining, you'll probably remember what the interior looks like. To an extent. Well, throughout the hotel in The Shining, there's this carpet everywhere, a weird hexagon-shaped carpet. And it's pretty iconic, and not used very often. So when the devs of Luigi's Mansion sprinkled this carpet throughout floor 11, a lot of fans speculated that it's a reference to The Shining. And while this one isn't nearly as iconic as Twin Peaks, I could see them doing it just to be a reference to the movie. Teased in Smash reveal. When announcing Simon from Castlevania for Smash, The start of the trailer had Luigi wandering through a castle in his Luigi's Mansion attire, and this was in 2018. A year before Luigi's Mansion 3, and before Luigi's Mansion 3 was even announced. So it was a bit of a tease to an upcoming Luigi's Mansion. So while some fans were probably disappointed it was a Castlevania character just getting added to Smash, they'd eventually get a brand new Luigi's Mansion the very next year. Polterpup's pupils. As a weird artistic choice by Next Level Games, Polterpup's pupils were removed for Luigi's Mansion 3, despite getting them back at the end of Dark Moon. I do prefer the non-pupiled Polterpup. In my opinion, it does look better, but it is a bit weird to just change it back out of nowhere. Common ghost names spell ghost. Just like how the different mansions in Dark Moon ended up spelling out ghost with their first letters, the same thing happens with the names of the common ghosts in Luigi's Mansion 3, being the Goobs, G, Hammers, H, Oozers, O, Slinkers, S, and Trappers, T, combined spelling out ghost. Chef Souffle inspired by Luigi's Mansion 1 cut chef ghost. In the beta of Luigi's Mansion 1, there was a chef ghost that ended up getting cut before release. Well, this ghost kind of came back in Luigi's Mansion 3. A new ghost called Chef Souffle was added, being, you guessed it, a chef. The actual appearance isn't too similar, but some fans did want to see a chef ghost back in the game, and this was Next Level Games' way of sort of bringing that cut chef ghost back. Poltergust poster in EGAD's room. In EGAD's room on the 5th floor, you can see the design documents for the first ever Poltergust. It's hard to see, but if you really zoom in, it's the first one from Luigi's Mansion. Despite EGAD seemingly not caring what happens to Luigi, he at least likes his old inventions he gave to Luigi enough to turn them into posters. Helen Gravely had no reflection. When exiting the elevator with Helen Gravely in the intro to the game, you can see that everything but her actual body has a reflection. So I guess in the world of Luigi's Mansion, the ghosts kind of act like vampires in a way, where they don't have reflections. Odd choice. I mean, I don't entirely know if it's intentional because there's certainly ghosts that do have reflections, but at least in this scene, whether it be a glitch or design decision, she doesn't have a reflection. It references. In the B2 floor, you can see some different references to it. There's paper boats floating around in the water, and a single balloon sitting at the end of this tunnel. I'd be slightly more skeptical if this was a reference to it, but seeing as how much the devs love putting horror movies in this game, it's for sure a reference to it, especially with how popular the It movie was when they started development of this game. It lines up perfectly to be a reference to it. Dr. Potter's beta plant. In the beta of Luigi's Mansion 3, the plant monster originally had 3 heads. We can't see this anymore, like it's not in the concept art. We only know there was 3 from devs talking about it. But yeah, this killer plant used to be a sort of Hydra killer plant in a way. I really just wish there was any way of seeing what this actually looked like. Boo Morse code. When you first get close to a Boo's hiding spot, your controller will buzz out BOO in Morse code. It's super unique to see an Easter egg like this. I mean, using a controller's vibration to do Morse code is something at least I've never heard of. Just a bit of an insanely creative Easter egg for Next Level Games to do. Poltergust Type G. Just like how you can get the diamond suction shot, you can get a golden poltergust called the Type G after completing every single achievement in the game. Like the other collectible variants, this one actually doesn't affect the device at all. It doesn't make it act any differently, but it does give it a complete aesthetic overhaul. Just a bit insane to unlock it. The floors were meant to link. During development of the game, initially all the floors were going to be linked, looking similar to each other and having puzzles that you would do one part on, say, floor 2, and then either floor 1 or 3 would unlock something. And while this could have been a good idea, I mean the concept was for sure good, and while it would have been interesting to see what this would have looked like, it ultimately got scrapped. I'd say it was for the better though. With having the different floors separated, it makes having the different themed floors make more sense, and it would have been fun to go through, kind of Resident Evil style, getting one thing on floor 2, then unlocking something on floor 5, but I also think with Nintendo drawing in a lot of younger players, it might have just been a bit too complicated. Geist paint. According to EGAD in the FAQ section of the guide, the type of makeup that Helen Gravely uses is something from a brand called Geist Paint. It's only mentioned this one time, just a ghost makeup brand, but that means in the universe of Luigi's Mansion, ghosts are popular enough to have their own brands. So while Luigi is defeating a lot of these ghosts and, always saving the day, there's probably tons of other ghosts out there. I mean, at least enough to make a whole makeup brand for ghosts. Unused music. Just like the last two games, there's a good chunk of unused music for this game that we still have access to through the files. I'll be playing them now and for the next entry or two. Red coin. There's a sprite of an unused red coin left over in the files. No red coins made it to the full release of the game, but at one point during development, this was likely considered to be a part of a type of puzzle that we never ended up seeing. It just got completely cut from the game. Tier 4. Luigi Push. There's a glitch for speedrunning Luigi's Mansion 3 that can get Luigi to phase through objects, specifically this one gate. By using Luigi to flashlight stun Luigi, Luigi will cover his face in an animation, and while he's doing this, you can actually push him around. Normally you can't at all when you're Luigi. And aside from being able to just push him around like this, you can push him through other objects, making him phase through things, like getting Luigi to phase through this gate, completely skipping the entire 6th floor of The Last Resort. Dabbing goobs. So you know when I said this game was originally being made for the Wii U? Yeah, when the Wii U was the main Nintendo console, unfortunately, dabbing was still popular. So when you go to the dance hall, the goobs end up dabbing in front of Luigi. Scariest part of the entire game. 40 rooms in RIP Suites. Originally, the RIP Suites was going to have 40 different rooms. I mean, the RIP Suites are a cool part of the game, but with the rooms already feeling slightly repetitive with how few there are, having 40 of them would have just been awful. I'm really glad the devs changed their mind on this. 1.0 glitches. When Luigi's Mansion 3 first released, the game was much glitchier. Not unplayable by any means. I mean, lots of people didn't even come across any glitches, but there were some silly ones that you can't do anymore. Like the carpet glitch I previously mentioned, there were tons of other weird things that just ended up getting patched out. Scrapped amusement park floor. One of the floors that ended up getting scrapped before release was the amusement park floor. We don't know a whole lot about this one, aside from that it was most likely replaced by the Twisted Suites on floor 11, but out of all the cut things in this game, an entire amusement park floor being cut really sucks. The theme would have been great for this game. King Boo's crown is an anti-Dark Moon fragment. At the end of Dark Moon, Luigi repairs the Dark Moon, making all the ghosts peaceful again. But they're still all angry in Luigi's Mansion 3. So there's a theory that the crown King Boo wears is a sort of anti-Dark Moon fragment, because without something like that, King Boo wouldn't have been able to make all the common ghosts bad. And they're certainly acting exactly like they were when the Dark Moon was shattered. So there's something overriding this Dark Moon. Even their pupils disappeared, just like they did at the start of Dark Moon. Ice and fire floors. When designing the different floors for The Last Resort, the devs wanted to make this game unique. I mean, it was going to be another Luigi's Mansion game, so there were going to be a lot of parallels, but they wanted this game to feel entirely unique. So at one point, ice and fire floors were in development, but they saw these floors as too basic, too similar to something Nintendo would do on the regular. So these two floors ended up getting completely cut. Luigi at the start. In the reveal trailer of Luigi's Mansion 3, Luigi was shown at the start of The Last Resort with Luigi already in his pack. Some fans speculate that possibly in the beta of the game, Luigi was available from the start, and this may be true. I mean, we don't know, but it could have also been that it was just for the trailer, having something weird and lime green to have the fans speculate about. Rule 34. And that's it for the complete Luigi's Mansion Iceberg. Sorry this one was a compilation video. I've been working on a Deltarune one, but food poisoning had me feeling like death for an entire week. Anyways, that should be out in probably 2 weeks, and yeah, look at this cool art I've been doing. I don't know, Deltarune inspired me a bit. Anyways, I hope you have a great rest of your day, week, month, and I'll see you in the next one.